reusable energy programs think that they've already done everything they need to do. And clearly that's not the case. And I will say that for a great number of my peers in my county. So having sequestration in there opens up a whole new door of local implementation, as well as funding to support that implementation. So I'd prefer if we could add greenhouse gas reductions mandate, and then just add sequestration, maybe, because that's referring to the law. Ted, you're the wordsmith here, but I really would love to see sequestration in there.
Yeah.
Can I make a suggestion? It fits more naturally into the first one because it's about markets. So maybe at the end put including recommendations for developing compost markets, or yeah, I mean, something along those lines.
But even the concept of sequestration is not where most elected officials who control the budget think. So it needs to be there and it needs to be visible.
Mm-hmm. You have requests to speak from Commissioner Davis and Sky.
Yeah, actually, I was going to make a suggestion along the lines of Nick, although I was going to say including sequestration, and it sounds like there's a desire to specifically call out sequestration. So, yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Sky?
I just don't know if most people connect sequestration and markets. So if we're talking about under item 2, proposals for achieving greenhouse gas reduction mandate related to organics, we say they're including recovering 20% of edible food for human consumption. You could add at the end there, as well as carbon sequestration and other innovative approaches to reducing greenhouse gas emissions.
Mr. Lapis, did you have a thought on that?
Fine. I am, again, perfectly fine punting all the wordsmithing to staff and the chair, and so we can get back on the agenda.
We're actually okay. We've got a couple more minutes till 10 more minutes because we made up time earlier. So, and this is important because this is what's going to go out to people and we're going to ask them to respond to this. So we want to make sure everybody's comfortable with it.
There's a request from here.
Yeah, by Commissioner Segura saying to please add the language on effective permitting process. And I guess, Commissioner Lapis, where might that go? It would be in the infrastructure somewhere. How the permitting would be addressed, right? Which is basically achieving the goals. It's very hard to achieve the goals if people can't get a permit for anything.
Right. Yeah, actually towards that end.
Do you have a suggestion of where that might go?
I mean, I'm thinking at the end of 2, I just don't know how to make it all sound like a sentence that actually reads.
Okay, so let's read it. So proposals for achieving the greenhouse gas reductions mandate in SB 1383, Laura, to recover 75% of organic waste by 2025, including recovering 20% of edible food for human consumption, as well as carbon sequestration. Now so if the permitting issue is only addressing organics, I think that's a miss, because to me, there's multiple issues with permitting that go beyond the organic sites. Isn't that, Mr. Segura, what you're saying? Yeah. So I think it's up, maybe we put it.
So maybe add at the end of 3, including infrastructure and permitting needs.
Mm-hmm. The proposals for achieving the policy goal of AB 341 Chesbro state that not less than 75% of solid waste generated be sourced, reduced, recycled, or composted, including infrastructure and permitting needs. That sounds good to me. Is everybody okay with that? Thumbs up? Yeah.
The last thing I'd say is if we have sequestration in 2, we don't need it in 3. So I think one or the other.
Don't need it in 1.
I think it's better in 1. I really think it's better in 1 in the context of the language of 3, and having it twice. We don't need to go fishing for everything, or I would make some suggestions about paper.
I think
recycling and so forth.
that solved it, right?
I think
Now we've
so.
only got it in one place, and I agree with that. That's-
We
Through
have
the
requests to
chair,
speak from Commissioner Ferrante, Ward, and Schneider.
Commissioner Ferrante.
Yeah, I mean, I understand wanting to get everyone's concerns in here and make sure that it's complete. But, you know, as Nick suggested, this is really just intended to be an initial solicitation for public comment. So, I mean, I think it's pretty comprehensive right now. Maybe we should, you know, focus on, you know, what we want this to look like, right? What's the initial date we want comments by? Let's see what kind of comments we get, and then we can refine the questions based on the information we have, right? If we still have lingering questions about permitting, for example, maybe we can then do a second round with more targeted questions. Because I know all the committees have also identified what their needs are. I know the permitting issue absolutely came up in the committees, and I think it's going to be discussed thoroughly, but
No, makes sense. I think
no,
that's-
I'm just thinking maybe we should just start broader and then drill down as we get some comments and see where we have information gaps.
Great comment noted. And Commissioner Ward?
Yeah, I think we're pretty much close to done here. I do think it's important on number 3 to add including infrastructure, processing capacities and permitting needs. So I think a lot of the issues we want to address is that we need a lot more capacity than we currently have, and that needs to be highlighted.
I'm fine with that. I don't see anybody opposed to that. And if you are, please say something. Otherwise, we'll move on to Commissioner Schneider.
I'm trying to figure out where this might fit, given that we're in the same environment that we were in the early mid-90s, where we needed to find jobs and we needed to retrain people, and training people to processing and remanufacturing is a higher paid job. It's the green jobs portion of it. Now, it might all be automatic when we think about that, but if the federal government does come through with infrastructure funding to the states that include retraining people, that's another idea that we should get to have or put in here. And I don't know if it would fit in one. Typically, I'm not a wordsmither, but if we said markets for processing and remanufacturing recycled materials and developing green jobs is the simplest term for that.
Wait a minute, before we change that, I do want to discuss that for a minute, because I remember when Commissioner Lapis sent this to me as a proposal, the first thing I changed in number 1 was that policy recommendations to develop markets, and or something different than that, Nick. And then I changed it to California because I'm so interested in developing our infrastructure, not the infrastructure of all the states around us. So I was trying to get at that very issue. I don't believe this bill actually asked us about job creation. Nick, is that correct?
And John can chime in. I think that maybe in the code section reference for markets, there might be something about jobs.
Yeah, it specifically is. And,
Yeah.
Okay,
So that's fine. And
so that
yeah,
works. Okay, very good. Because I think we all want that.
And Chair Sanborn, even if the federal funding comes through, it would be for local based job creation. And also serving on COVID economic recovery teams right now, job creation and people who were formerly in service industry jobs that may be going away. This is a high priority for those of us at the local level.
Okay, I don't see any more comments. I think we had a good discussion. The only thing left, unless there's any other comments, which I do not see in the chat box right now, is the identification of a date to get our initial comments from people so we can start discussing them in the committees. I think some of the committees have scheduled their next meetings for the end of this month. And if we do a hard push through the CalRecycle listservs and through all of our contacts, which all of us have, and all of us have different listservs and so forth that we use, I'm wondering if we can get initial responses by the 21st of this month, give everybody a couple weeks to kind of outline. It doesn't have to be fully fleshed out, but at least start giving us ideas. And then we can toss those to the various committees for your next committee meetings. And again, we can take them ongoing, of course. we just trying to get people to provide us feedback as quickly as they can in the format that would be most useful to us. Or we could do it for the 24th, give people another weekend. Or we could do the 31st, whatever you all think is, or even next month. It's up to you, but we are, you know, it's a time sensitive request that we're under to provide the advice.
Should we, if this is coming to the commission, should we be trying to receive them in advance of, I guess, is it 3 days prior to the
Yes.
commission meeting to be able to review comments?
Yeah. So
somewhere 12 to 3 days prior to a commission meeting?
well, actually, they need to be on the agenda 10 days in advance. We have to call them out.
Yeah, so, you know, I mean, you know, that's the initial date, and you could back it up from maybe one of the September meetings.
The September 2nd, if we do 10 days in advance, so that's 1, 2. Yeah, we're looking at basically, like I said, about the 21st. Staff, is that right? If we get these comments by the 21st of August, we could put them on the next commission agenda. Cover cycle.
Yeah, sorry, I was counting the days. So the September 2nd notice would have to be up by the 21st.
Yeah. So if we don't get them by basically the 20th, or, you know, we would not be able to get them on the next commission agenda. So let's just say,
Heidi, if these are all being slotted, to the committees, it doesn't have to be on the full commission agenda.
Mhm.
So I don't think the September 2nd date necessarily would matter.
they just have to understand if they don't get them in by then, that we can't hear it at the commission meeting if anybody wanted us to. We could defer
Right.
immediately as they come in to committees, and the committees have a standing agenda item to take public comments, or also that would allow you all to discuss it in committees.
I think if we shoot for the end of the month and then have the second committee meeting, or I guess third committee meeting of each committee, could then talk about them.
Cycle, when is the first committee meeting going to be held?
I believe it's August 20th for labeling and media.
Okay. Well, it'll just be what it is, whatever you guys think is reasonable.
I think the more time you give people, the better the quality of proposals we get.
Conversely, I found that if you give people time, they take it. So it just gets put to the bottom of the pile. So it's up to you guys. I really am, fine with whatever you decide.
This is Tamar. My calendar. Oh, sorry, my camera's on. I just wanted, I had to step out for a second. Are we talking about the notice requirements? Because the notice requirements for committee meetings are the same as for commission meetings. I just want to bring that up.
Yeah, that's what I was, if the specific
Okay.
comment.
If you're considering that, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, we have to have 10 days in advance of even the committees. But the committees have a standing agenda item to hear public comments, I believe, but we can't hear them unless they're specifically named on the notice, which means it's 10 days in advance. You're right. Yeah. So we would need 10 days for any committee as well. So see, we're already into early September to even hear any of these, even if they were to turn them around in a couple of weeks. That's the process is what's going to slow us down. That's why we need people to help us stay on track, because we do need these sooner rather than later. It's up to you. We don't have to even put a date.
I think August 21 seemed to work, especially if we emphasize that you're looking for conceptual outlines that are brief, and that if there's more interest in what's being proposed, that the commissioner or the committee would ask for more details.
Yeah, that's a good way to phrase it. Maybe Nick, you and I, and we can wordsmith this, or you can work with Rich, Vice Chair, on wordsmithing the introduction on that point. And then if the commission's okay with that, so we can move on and stay on schedule, because I think it's basically buttoned up. Is everybody
Yeah,
okay
I
with that?
trust you. I totally trust you, Heidi, to wordsmith it as much as you want.
Okay. And then,
If I could, just one suggestion, maybe if we're going to use an online form to receive the comments, you could do a character or word limit, and emphasize that, yeah, these are conceptual and we don't need the full detail.
thank you. Yep. Okay, then we'll just defer the wordsmithing of the introduction of this. And we'll keep the August 21st date, and we will get this turned around, work with Cal Recycle on the format to make sure it's something that is accessible under ADA laws. And thank you all for a very healthy discussion. And I hope the public knows how much we are eager to get their proposals. And thanks, Nick, for bringing this up and being taking the lead on this. Greatly appreciated. Okay, so we're at 9:28. We're not doing badly at all. Our next agenda item is agenda item number 6 on committee guiding principles. And we put 20 minutes down for this discussion. I'm not sure if it will take this long. This is where we were going to discuss from our last commission meeting. You had asked us to, the chair or vice chair and I, to look at guiding principles. And what I'll just turn it over in a minute to Commissioner Vallier, but because he took the lead on this. But there was a question as to whether it's committee versus commission. And he thought it was commission. I heard committee, but then the committees happened and you all did such a good job. We've all watched them that we weren't sure what we need here, if we need anything. So I'm going to, before we start the discussion, I'm just going to raise the question with the legal staff on first the one. I'm sorry, Tamar, you were unavailable in the first question for agenda item 2. So I can ask that now and then ask another one related to item 6. But how can the commission set a time limit on the length of public comments? I believe that's up to the discretion of the chair of every committee and the commission. Is that correct? I can't hear you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, you're on mute or something.
That's exactly what it was. You can set reasonable limits. I think even I want to say that the statute might even say 3, such as 3 to 5 or whatever. But whatever limits that you set, if there is an interpreter, you have to actually give double the time.
Okay, thank you.
Now,
So I guess
are you taking oral comments at the committee meetings? You're taking oral comments?
Well, even with written, what's being submitted are very long and they're taking up too much time. And we feel that even though we're having to do this remotely, we should be able to put the same sort of time limits on comments in order to keep things moving.
Yeah, I was
Otherwise,
just wondering how you would gauge how long it would take to read something. That's all. But maybe we should have like a page limit or something like that. Because these were written when we were going to have live meetings, not necessarily written meetings, and everything's going to be available afterwards. But yeah, you can set reasonable limits on comments.
so what I'm going to suggest to every committee chair is that you figure out what works for your committee on reasonable limits. I will work with the vice chair on the commission limits, but I have started today by saying 3 minutes. I think that's very reasonable. And if they go beyond that, especially when they're being read off, it's very time consuming and can really cut into our discussion time. So with that, the other question I had for you
Chair
is,
Sanborn, you have a few comments from commissioners. Do you want them now or do you want to wait?
yeah, let's do them now while we're on this item. Yeah.
We have Schneider, Valle, and Davis.
Commissioner Schneider?
Chair Sanborn, I think 3 minutes is reasonable. It's what's used at government. If there were suddenly a lot of them, typically you switch to 2 minutes.
Yep.
The problem of reading, because we read letters received because we haven't opened, well, we're just beginning to open up live comment, is staff sometimes does concatenate the letters, but I'm torn on that one. But maybe the direction should just go out. If you want your letter read in, practice it. See if it can get done in under 3 minutes. Or two.
I agree, or we just limit characters that we can't read over a certain number of characters. So I'll work with Cal Recycle and the vice chair on that to come up with something reasonable. Next, is Commissioner Vai.
Tamara, this is a question for you. What we've done at county meetings is that actually we've limited the time for public comment. For example, 15 to 20 minutes of the agenda, and then that's it. And then we'll move on, and then toward the end, we'll do another 15 or 20 minutes, just so that the rhythm of the meeting can continue. We've had this, when you have 40 people calling in on a very critical issue, is it okay to limit to 15 minutes and then go on and then come back later on for other comments? Can we limit the time, not just 2 or 3 minutes, but the actual window?
It's a great idea. So let's work on that together with the Cal Recycle staff. And Commissioner Davis?
Yeah, I guess 2 suggestions. I mean, we've been reading the full written comments, but we really can't take action. And then those comments end up either incorporated in the minutes or posted on the portal. So, you know, acknowledging the receipt of the comments, since we can't take action, might be sufficient and be something to look at. And I really like the idea of having an online form with a character limit and somebody, I'm sure there are people who know how many words per minute somebody can speak, and you just limit it around that, whether it's words or characters. So yeah, I think we can't spend the whole meeting reading letters.
Agreed. And Tamara, is there anything else on that you can advise us? Because we're really concerned that we're going to end up just reading long and many public comments into the record and not be able to get our work done.
Totally understand. I believe today, Carew was saying that the full thing had been read at the committee meeting, right? That's what she said. And then okay. Yeah. So I like the idea of finding a way to limit it in a way that's gets everything in, and then we make the whole comment available, or the more detailed comment available later. So that we have to make adjustments, because the 3 to 5 was really talking about spoken, you know, and now we have to translate it to what we would do. And reasonable is the guiding principle. So definitely, you don't want to spend the whole time reading people's comments. So we'll work on something. We'll work on the details, and some of these are great suggestions. It doesn't dictate how we do it. It's just we have to allow time for public comment. So, and they need to be available for other people.
That sounds good. And we could actually read exactly what they wrote, but maybe just the meaty chunks of it if we need to limit, and we can just.
What I would not suggest is that you pick and choose yourself, but if you tell them to give a short introduction, because that would allow people who heard it to know whether or not they wanted to hear more about it. So if we don't read the whole thing, and maybe when we do it, we can give the form, and one part of the form, you've seen those forms that like when you ask for I have a question for someone and they want to know, briefly state. So maybe a briefly state that will be read, and then
okay. So you and Richard and I will talk about it with the staff, and we'll come up with a proposal. Okay, thank you so much. And then the other question I had for this item number 6, that's a legal question, was the advice that the committees cannot break into subcommittee groups of 2 to work on products and bring them back to their committee to vet in public. This is very, very limiting of getting the work done. We can't wordsmith everything with 17 people in a public venue, and we're just worried how this will limit our work. And several of us serve in other capacities, and we've been allowed to work in committee subgroups that are not a quorum, and be able to get that work to the board or to the commission, so that there's something to shoot at, where people have had time to dig in, wordsmith, and then bring it to the public view and the full commission view. Is that possible? Because I know committees are already meeting and wondering, why can't we meet in 2s to get some of the work?
But I don't see any reason, as long as we have 2 members not necessarily commission members, but 2 people, then it falls in that exception that we don't have to have the follow the open meeting and the notice and all that stuff. So we keep it to two
We can
human
do-
bodies.
Okay, so
Yeah.
the direction then legally, just to make sure we're all clear, so every committee understands this, you can have 2 committee members meet to do some work on a specific topic and bring it back to your committee. That is allowed. So I really want to make sure everybody's clear on that, because I don't see how we're going to get through all this work if we're not allowed to do that. And I had heard at a committee meeting that that was the way Cal Recycle staff had said it. And I just want to make sure.
And what I
everybody knows.
will do, I'll prepare I'll give you the points of what makes it an exception, so you can make sure you follow those, and staff will send it out.
Thank you so
What,
much.
you know, what
That's
the
very
exception, what the legal requirements of this is. That's actually a great idea.
Okay, so Tamar, that's something you're going to do, is provide our guidance document.
Blurb about what the parameters of the 2-person committee meetings are.
Very
Subcommittee.
good. Very good. Thank you so much. Very appreciated. All right, well, so with that, I'll turn it over to Vice Chair Valle to go through the guiding principles he developed, and we can discuss these and if we need them for the commission and or the committees. Chair Valle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate that. Fellow commissioners, I had somebody recently ask me, what is the commission all about? Can you explain what you do and what's your charge, and eventually what do you hope to achieve? So with that thought in mind, the last paragraph, beginning with these principles, I think I plucked that right out of the bill, and the other elements or pieces of that bill that were incorporated into a description of who we are and what we do and what we hope to achieve. So this sort of describes to the outside world where we're headed. And I think it's important to have current language in it that talks about the situations that we're all facing and the lessons that we've learned in the workplace, and we're now trying to overcome as a society. So with that thought in mind, these guiding principles sort of give us some sense of direction about where we're headed in terms of our future here in California with regard to recycling. And then what we should hold as principles as fellow commissioners to achieve some outcomes that are beneficial to the broad population of the state. So my thought was originally that this would be something that the entire commission would look at, and or as the chair has just pointed out, maybe each subcommittee would like to have their own guiding principles because they may be very focused on some very specific areas. So this was intended, first of all, just for the entire commission, that these were going to be directives that we're going to keep in mind as we move forward, that will sort of give us some parameters in a lot of areas in the marketplace and ethically as a commission, because I think we have entered a new era in our communities. And so I tried to incorporate some of those thoughts around labor and socioeconomic equity. And we all know that technology is going to be changing in our industry. And I certainly hope, as a supporter of labor, that it'll be beneficial to creating more jobs in our industry. So with that, I just want to throw that out for your consideration and see if the commissioners have any thoughts on this. Hopefully you've had time to look at this before now.
You have comments from Commissioner Ward, Sky, and Dell.
Hang on, I just want to make sure Commissioner Valle knows that these were not shared with the commission in advance. I don't believe they were not allowed, they couldn't do it on the notice they were given. So everybody's seeing this for the first time. I'm not sure if you want to read it or we can just try to read it separately and then start comments, but.
Well, I think you can all see it.
Yeah.
Anybody want me to read it? I mean, it's not that long, so.
Okay, so the first comments then are Commissioner Dell, I guess.
Chair, just a point of process regarding accessibility, because I know that staff has brought this up several times. If we're saying that everyone can see it, but obviously that's not necessarily the case for everyone online, is that going to be an issue?
Well, it's not final and it will be posted. We are, it seems, allowed to show you guys and create things live this way.
I really appreciate Commissioner Valle's efforts on this, and I think it's important that we do have guiding principles. I would suggest that the first one, environmental, say addressing climate change and reducing adverse impacts of our global material culture. And reducing the impacts of our global material culture. Whether or not one views one as a consumer, you are part of the material culture.
Do you want to say global?
Well, I'm concerned about plastics in the ocean, and when we're talking about the efficiency of plastics recovery, we have to look at where those plastics are going, and if part of our plastics are ending up in the ocean, then we need to take that responsibility seriously.
And do you mean the global impacts of our material culture?
I do.
I think I heard you say adverse. I didn't want
adverse. I did. Reduce the adverse impacts of our global material culture.
Reduce the adverse global impact.
Adverse impact. Adverse global impacts of our material culture. That's correct.
Chair Sanborn, you brought up a great point about the live editing. Can we kick that over to Tamar for feedback of if we can continue to do live editing during these meetings?
Yeah, I think it's okay because it's.
Well, I didn't quite understand what you're talking about. You're talking about working on a document together during the meetings?
Yes, just as we are now.
Okay, there should be no problem with that.
Very good. Just want to check. Thank you.
No, better to check.
Thank you. And is Commissioner Sky next? Kobe?
I'll just clarify my question earlier, because when we're talking about public comments, they're read in their entirety or they're available on an online portal. But this is an example of a document that was not shared with the public. We'll be discussing it, and there might be sections of it where there's broad agreement. No one reads the section and no one edits it. So those that aren't seeing it visually will have no idea what is included until they see the final document that's posted later. So that was my question, Tamara, in terms of whether there's any accessibility issues with that approach.
Okay, I can't really speak to the accessibility issues as far as the ADA. I don't think that's what you're asking. What you're asking is you're talking and you're editing a document, and then the only thing that will be available written wise would be the final product. But if you're going to be editing it live in the meeting, people can hear you talking.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So
that would be fine.
The editing
you don't have a final product until you're done.
Yeah. The editing wasn't the concern. So in terms of the document itself, I do agree that it should be guiding principles for the commission that would apply to the committees as well. I don't know that the committees need separate guiding principles. I can't tell if there's more to the document or not, so maybe we'll see the rest of it later, but it seems like there might be more. But in terms of the section that we can see right now, at the top where it talks about, okay, we just scroll down. At the top where it talks about the commission will be raising and maintaining awareness of the forces that impact, that seems to be selling us short. I feel like we would be doing more than just raising awareness, maybe addressing the forces that impact recycling or something a little bit more meaningful. And then the other things that we have 3 bullets to talk about: environmental, social, and educational. It seems to be missing the economic impacts, which are also obviously very pressing, and we've discussed at length. So that might be a fourth bullet that we'd want to add.
Great comments. I agree. And if we start adding a fourth, I think we should number them instead of bullet. So we can refer to number 1, 2, 3, 4.
We have Commissioner Dell, Toyota, and Davis waiting, and then also a public comment.
Great, Commissioner Dell.
Okay. Yeah, 2 quick points. One, this focuses on recycling. I think anytime we say recycling, we should also say and organics management or and composting, right? Because it's both solid waste recycling into that is also organics. So those are 2 focus points for this, and this just says recycling. So it could be organics management if you don't want to say composting, or I defer to what the right word should be, but that component needs to be in there. And then the environmental, we shouldn't specifically call out climate change. It's other pollutants to the air. There's water issues. Unfortunately, I'm seeing too many recommendations that Californians should carefully wash out all kinds of containers before they put them in the recycle bin. And unfortunately, those containers aren't even recyclable. So we could be causing a drought by telling Californians to wash out all their peanut butter jars. So we need to address environmental impacts. And then that would include plastic pollution, solid waste. It's got to be multimedia. This is not just about carbon emissions, right? So addressing all environmental impacts, parentheses, air, water, solid waste, and reducing the adverse global impacts of our material culture. I like that because obviously that addresses the issue of exports and what impacts we may be having in other countries
Thank
if
you.
we continue to export.
Any comments on specific wordsmithing, Commissioner Dell?
Right, on the, so everywhere we say recycling and organics management or and composting, you choose. And then environmental needs to be revised to be addressing environmental impacts and reducing, it's got to be more than climate change.
So do we want to say all environmental impacts?
Multimedia, how about multimedia?
Multimedia environmental impacts. Yeah, that's well, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Does that work for everybody? Okay. So the next commenter is Commissioner Toyota.
Yeah, I'd like to see the equity expanded a little bit more, and I'm not quite sure how to do it because I think that equity is also a part of the environmental portion of it, and as far as environmental justice. So instead of adding the equity and environmental justice into each category, maybe we change the social more to an equity, just flat out equity, and that everything involves keeping equity in the job force, in the environmental justice, in everything, economical. So it's not just, it feels just a little compartmentalized right now.
Okay. Do you have a wordsmithing suggestion?
Yeah, either can we change social to equity, and then we can just add in that
or
environmental justice and social equity are a component of all of the aspects that this committee.
Commissioner Valle, is this getting to what you were trying to outline here?
No, it's even better. Thank you. That's a great suggestion. I like the word equity versus social.
Excellent.
Are aspects, okay, environmental justice and social equity are aspects of are aspects of all
all areas of our work, or
yeah, but
or
a little
in everything
better.
we do, maybe, or considered in everything we do.
Yeah, I like that. Are all our considerations in all of the
Commission's work.
Yeah, and all of the,
How about sustainability, Sarah? I think they're part of
I
sustainability.
like, sustainability contains those things, but I don't know that everybody really sees it like that. So it's good
Well,
to
then,
call out
there
each
you go.
component of, okay. Okay, so environmental are considerations of all of the policy components that we consider. How's that?
Or policies that we consider?
Yeah.
And then so we keep preserving the existing labor force and allowing for future job creation. Allowing is kind of, I wonder if we want to say expanding future job creation to ensure racial and socioeconomic equity in the face of emerging technology. Does that make sense? Is that okay? Commissioner Vai? Yeah, okay. Obviously, we want to expand the jobs in this area. Okay, so is that it then, Commissioner Toyota? Are you good?
That's good. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Great comments. And I'll turn it over to CalRecycle staff, Carew Cruz. I believe there's public comment.
Yes. It's from Michael Rock, retired city manager. The commissioners discussed for some time that the issue of permitting composting in organic facilities and the concept of sequestration. There are facilities in Southern California that have been trying to get the permit for organic and food waste recycling for more than 10 years. I was directly involved with trying to cite the facility that would have compiled with the diversion requirement of AB 939 in subsequent legislation, but was unable to receive a permit from the local enforcement agency and the other permitting agency. This is ridiculous. Either issue the permit in a timely manner or reject it before millions of dollars are spent trying to get the permit. There has to be a better way to permit landfills, organic facilities, and MRFs. Please streamline this process. The end of the comment.
Thank you. It seems like that might have been a comment for another agenda item because we're working on the guiding principles. I think we did address that in our outline earlier where Commissioner Segura specifically brought this up, the permitting. So I think we have addressed that comment already. He might have missed the earlier part of the meeting. I happen to know him, so I will call him after this meeting and make sure that we've addressed it. Thank you, Mr. Rock. Commissioner Davis, did you have a comment on the guiding principles? I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm using my phone. Two things. I hope this might be something that we revisit from time to time as we progress, and then it looks like we're looking for language on economicals, so I can read something if whoever's transcribing wants to let me know if I'm going too fast. But I'd suggest facilitate growth of recycling-based manufacturing, including organics facilities, or organics facilities. Reuse and repair, period.
Can I make a suggestion?
Go ahead.
To move reuse and repair first before recycling is the hierarchy. So facilitate the growth of reuse, repair, and recycling-based manufacturing.
Reuse and repair opportunities or businesses.
Yeah, that's good. Facilitate growth of reuse and repair businesses and recycling-based manufacturing, including organics facilities.
No, recycling-based. Okay, reuse and repair businesses, comma, recycling-based manufacturing, including organics facilities.
Very helpful. Is everybody okay with that? Or are there other thoughts on that economical?
I did want to finish it.
Oh, gotcha.
grow California infrastructure to avoid reliance on export markets and build jobs or employment, business opportunities, and wealth in state. There you go.
Anybody else?
Warren, we have requests to speak from Commissioners Ferrante and Ward.
Yep, I see. So Commissioner Ferrante?
Yeah, thanks. I just want to go back to the comment that Commissioner Dell had about, and thank you for reminding us that we should be calling out organics management specifically when we talk about recycling, because I think just using the word recycling organics oftentimes gets forgotten. I do want to be very careful, though. I see that we use the term organics management in here, but I think we need to be careful to not call out a particular management type like composting, and it should just be generally broad organics management to cover all types of materials in the organic stream and all different management practices. I think when we start siloing material types or management practices, we do ourselves a real disservice. And then some just more nitpicky things.
I'm sorry, before you move on, is there a change in language? Because I see at the top it says recycling and organics management.
No, it does say organics management, and I'm happy for that. I just, Nadal was saying either organics management or composting. I think we want to be very clear that we always say organics management and not call out any one management type. And then I think that beginning part, again, can and should be simplified the way Commissioner Sky recommended. I think the raising and maintaining awareness can be taken out completely and just say the commission will be addressing the forces that impact recycling and organics management. And then under bullet number 1, I think maybe we can change material culture to material consumption. That might be more clear.
Is everybody okay with that, or shall I say, is anybody not okay with that? So I think it's fine, but very good. Okay, so I see that Commissioner Ward, I think you're up next.
Okay, I appreciate Commissioner Davis's suggestions. There's a couple things I think we should add. I think we need to facilitate support for and growth of, because part of our issue is we've had some retraction in our infrastructure. So under economical facilitate support for and growth of reuse and repair businesses. I would say recyclers and secondary manufacturing it's a technical term, but essentially it's manufacturing using recycled products. But I want to emphasize we have recyclers, we have fewer drop-off centers and buyback centers. That's an important part of the overall infrastructure, and I think we need to support those, and that's part of what's been lacking. And the recycling-based manufacturing, while that's really important, we also have the recycling facilities and the processors that also need to be included. So that's the idea. So recycling.
Yeah, processing is probably a good add in there.
Okay, so recycling, comma, processors.
How about recycling-based manufacturing and recycling-based processing and manufacturing?
I like that. That's great. Those were my comments.
And I'm gonna do a time check. I don't see any more comments, and we are now officially 10 minutes over, actually about 15 over. So I just want to say this has been incredibly awesome conversation. And it seems like we might want to just read this out loud and see if there's any last edits we want to make before we finalize this for now and adopt it. And then if we want to address it later, you can certainly request that it be put back on the agenda for further refinement. Commissioner Valier, is that okay, Vice Chair?
Yes, Madam Chair, that's fine. Would you like me to read it?
Please, yeah, so we can all just kind of absorb where we are right now.
All right. Remember, so just for benefit of the public, the commission's title came from the bill, and the very last paragraph is almost verbatim from the bill as well. The guiding principles of this statewide commission will be addressing the forces that impact the recycling, organics management, and manufacturing industry in the state of California. Namely, 1, environmental, addressing multimedia environmental impacts and reducing the adverse global impacts of our material consumption. 2, equity. Environmental justice and social equity are considerations of all the policies that we consider. Preserving the existing labor force and expanding future job creation to ensure racial and social economic equity in the face of emerging technology designed to increase operational and cost efficiencies. 3, economic, educational. Clear and concise propagation of evidence-based data and strategies to create knowledge and understanding for effective recycling. 4, economical. Facilitate growth of reuse and repair businesses, recycling-based processing and manufacturing, including organics facilities. Grow California infrastructure to avoid reliance on export markets and build employment businesses, business opportunities, and wealth in state. With these principles, the statewide commission will, among other things, issue policy recommendations to achieve specified market development and waste reduction goals, while also providing regular feedback to Cal Recycle on public messaging designed to encourage proper recycling and to minimize contamination in curbside recycling programs. And that last statement, I'm almost sure, is verbatim from the bill.
Chair Sanborn, it looks like you're on mute if you're trying to speak.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, if you could scroll up just a bit to, we could see all 4 bullets are. I was thinking, so we have environmental, equity, educational. I'm wondering if we say environment, equity, education, and economic instead of alls.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, everybody's summing up. Okay, so we'll change that. And then under equity, there was just something with the wording, preserving
Yep.
the existing.
The second sentence for consistency should read preserve. And under education, similarly, you want to change the statement sentence to propagate, clear, and concise. That makes it a consistent tense. So propagate, clear, and concise. So you start with propagate. There you go.
Okay. So in the second sentence of the equity, preserve the existing labor force and expanding.
Exactly, right.
Future job creation.
No, expand rather than expanding. Drop the term.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's it. That's what I had.
And future job creation. Or do we want to say expand job creation? Or do we want to say? Yeah, I just want to finish this. Let me wordsmith this because the wording just wasn't quite right. And then we can say preserve the existing labor force and expand future job creation to ensure racial and socioeconomic equity in the face. Well, yeah, I guess that reads a lot better now. I just wasn't sure if expanding future job creation made sense. It's just that we're expanding or we're creating jobs. And maybe we just take out expand in future and just say and job creation or preserve the existing labor force. I don't know. Ted, what do you think?
I like expand job creation. That's fine.
Okay, we'll leave it. Fine, no problem. Okay, so who's up for comments? Is that Nick?
We have Schneider and Sky.
Oh, gotcha. Commissioner Schneider.
Edit on the first line, the guiding principle statement. The second line, it goes that impact the recycling and organics management. I would recommend deleting the and adding reuse, comma. Then it's that impact reuse, recycling and organics management and manufacturing industry in blah, blah, blah. In keeping with the hierarchy.
Is that okay with everybody? Thumbs up? Yep, good. Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Great suggestion. Commissioner Ward, are you okay? Do you have anything else? Okay. Commissioner Sky?
Also for consistency on number 3, first, you should delete of after concise. when you revise that section, it needed to be deleted. And then when we say at the very end, effective recycling, we should use the same wording we have at the top, which is reuse, recycling, and organics management.
Great. And unless anybody good, everybody thumbs up, we're good. Okay. And then Commissioner Davis, thank you.
Yeah, two things real quick on number 4. The third, at the end of the third line, there should be a comma after employment.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to acknowledge the work that Commissioner Valle did to pull this together. Thank you.
Yeah, excellent job. Commissioner, or actually it's Carol Cruz, I believe. Do we have a public comment on this?
Yes. It's from Colleen Foster, City of Oceanside. If this is to be a charter of a public commission, shouldn't the public have an opportunity to provide comments prior to final approval by the commission? I am concerned that this was not publicly posted in advance. Considering the various and diverse goals of our industry, it would be greatly appreciated to have the opportunity to provide comments or feedback to better support the commission. Can final adoption be delayed until the next meeting? Otherwise, great discussion and effort. The end of the comments.
Yes, and I think she raises an excellent comment. We had planned on having this in advance, and really it was my fault. Commissioner Valle had this done. I thought it was about the committees. And then I got really busy with a press conference last week. So I think this is really good, and it was an excellent discussion. If you're all okay with it, I think we should just post it and allow people to provide any further comments to make sure we're being completely transparent. In fact, we could send it out on the listserv and ask for comments on this after today as a final draft, and that will adopt it at the next meeting, if that's okay with everybody.
I'll make that motion.
Excellent. A second?
I'll second it.
By Commissioner Ward. Everybody thumbs up with that? Excellent. Is there anybody that's not okay? I didn't see any thumbs down. Okay, so we unanimously agree that we're going to put this out as a final draft for public comment and take it up for adoption on the next agenda of the commission on the first week of September. Thank you very much, Ms. Foster, for your comments. That's exactly why we have them. Okay, we are now a few minutes over. I would think that before we get into our committee reports, we would want a 5-minute break. Is everybody okay with that? Great. I'll see you in 5 minutes at 10:15. Thank you all so much. And you might want to mute and turn off your camera while you're gone. Okay. Should be coming back to order here.
Hey Heidi, this is Paulina. It looks like you have the chat box handled. Do you want me to just back you up on it?
Yeah, for some reason today, the way it's formatted, I can see it. So yeah, back me up. If you see me missing anything, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, sounds great. It feels like I'm always interrupting, so that works.
No, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Okay, great. Thank you. Welcome back, commissioners. So we had set aside an hour for our agenda item number 8 on committee reports. We held our first committees of the 4 committees this last month, a few weeks. And the committees will each provide a summary of the work done in their first meetings. We're going to ask the committee chair to please just report the final decisions of the committees and to ask for input from the commissioners on items you wish to have full commissioner input. Each committee will have 15 minutes max in total discussion. So I would ask the chairs to please just very briefly say what happened and what you'd like us to discuss in relationship to what you're doing, or any questions on scope or priorities that you want to talk to the commissioners about, so that we have the most time for that discussion. And again, unfortunately, I have still a couple of legal questions that need to be brought up during this item, so I'll start with those. The first of the 2 legal questions are regarding committees. Can non-committee, this is some of the questions that came up in the committee meetings, which we overheard. Can non-committee commissioners ask questions during the committee meetings through the public comment portal? Tamar, are you there?
I'm here.
Great.
Where's my camera? The camera's on. Oh, it's not that. Yes, I'm here. No.
No, they cannot. So we can't even comment.
That's participating.
Okay, very good. So the answer to that question is no. This would be good to also document in the summary that you're going to put together for us of what the commissioners can do in committees.
Already on it.
Awesome, thank you. And then second question is, can non-committee commissioners make presentations at committee meetings?
No.
Even if they're on another committee and the committee's work is overlapping and they need to share information publicly with the other committee?
No. They can't participate. They can attend only as observers.
So how would the committees communicate amongst each other if there's an area, a gray area in between their scopes of work?
You definitely wouldn't do it at a meeting, and you can't do it at a serial meeting. So probably the communication would occur at the commission meeting. Because the problem is once you have 3 or more members, now we have all the Bagley Keene applies. And with that being the case, that you can't really have a meeting. It's going to be a serial meeting if you start with less than a quorum or even a quorum talking, and talking together. That needs to be open. So what are you trying to accomplish? You just don't want to take up commission time for it?
No. Well, if committees, which are doing the real meaty work, have a gray area on a specific scope, the importance of their discussions being shared with each other to make sure they're agreeing or not overlapping is important. And I wonder if the only way they can communicate is in writing. Can one committee put in writing like what they're doing in relationship to that issue and submit it to the other committee?
Yeah, that's different than the question I received earlier, which was, can they make presentations?
Yeah, since your answer was no to that.
That's different. So that's different because that communication is going to be made public, especially if you're going to be talking about it at the next meeting.
Okay, so the answer to can non-committee commissioners make presentations at other committee meetings? The answer is no. We cannot do that based on Tamar's advice, but we can have committees give written summaries and information or even questions to other committees for response. So that way it's
those documents should be available to the public. The reason you hear me hesitating is because if you get too many people, too many members communicating on a subject and making a decision, then it's a serial meeting. So that's what I just want to avoid, that part. But in terms of just the communicating backwards and forwards, as long as that information is available to the public upon, upon request, you don't have to just post it to be posting it.
But to qualify this, no committee has the authority to make any decision for the commission. They can only advise the commission. So the whole commission has to vote on something before it ends up in the report.
So they're just going to be like sharing documents backwards and forwards, and then maybe discussing it at a meeting.
Everything discussed in a committee meeting that's going to make part of our report and our advice will be made public at the commission meetings before we make a decision. Absolutely.
Okay. And it will be also available as a public record request if someone wants to know.
Absolutely. And so what I would encourage committee chairs to do is, if you want to have communication between committees, you agree on what you put in writing, whether it's even in a Word document or whatever, and you submit it to us in Cal Recycle so they can post it and put it on the next agenda for the committee meeting you wish to communicate with. And then that way it's all public and they can read it, and comment on it at their next committee meeting. Is that correct?
Now, who's the day you're talking about? Who's the day that can read and comment? Are you talking about?
The committees. So if market development wants to communicate with labeling, we would submit them a summary of our questions or comments or what we're doing on a particular item, so that they could put it on their agenda, they could read it, everything's public and transparent, and then they could discuss it.
Okay, got it.
And they could even respond in writing to the other committee.
They cannot do that, respond in writing in the sense of, I'm sorry, you mean just actually respond to the committee. The point is it when they respond back, when they give the answers, what's going to happen to that information?
It gets on the next committee agenda, gets discussed, and anything that's going to be decided to go to the commission is all done in public.
Okay, yeah, that should be fine.
Do any commissioners have any questions, or especially the chairs, on how this
I would really encourage you, if you've got any like specifics, questions about how that's working, that you submit it to legal. If you have questions that don't fall within what we've discussed, an additional questions about it.
Right. So
if you have something slightly, like just now, I was just asked, could you make presentations? And I told you couldn't do it. Now you told me, ask me about this. And so I gave you that information. But if what you find out about, if something comes up that wasn't covered by this discussion we're having right now, please feel free to run that by legal if you need to.
So any committee chairs, if you have a question on what you can do or cannot do, you can email it to Tamar and I, and we will work together with Commissioner Vallier, Vice Chair, about making sure we're all sticking to the same process, which is very important.
One thing that I saw as a recommendation when Elliot and Harley were doing this was they really wanted to avoid the appearance of anything improper and for staff to forward the information to each person, to forward the information that you had, rather than the committees going directly.
It's extremely limited. See, this is extremely limiting. I know.
Okay, I just saw a suggestion. I didn't see that it was required, just a suggestion so that we can avoid, but as long as no one's making any decision or taking any action, it's just discussion, and it's public at the commission meeting, and the documents are available. It's fine. Just no decisions or action can be taken.
I think every commissioner is very clear that we have never delegated to committees to make a final decision on anything. They're all advisory to the full commission, that we will all hear it publicly. So I'm going to go to our commissioners' comments. I believe the first one is for Commissioner Lapis.
Yeah, I just kind of want a clarification. I don't understand why a member of a committee from another committee would not be able to make a presentation as long as it still doesn't constitute a quorum of the board. So just hypothetically, the labeling committee is going to be issuing recommendations on compostable labeling. It would be good for Eric, who's the chair of the organics committee, to come and, talk about the recommendations of the organics committee on what is and isn't compostable. And that's fully noticed. It's in a Bagley-Keene meeting. There's no majority of the board on that call, or a majority of the commission.
Mhm.
I'm not sure why that would be illegal. So
So we're not
maybe-
talking about a majority or a quorum being there at any of
no,
the
a
meetings?
representative, a single representative.
Oh, a single representative. Well, what Bagley King says in 1123(6) is the attendance of a majority of the members of a state body at an open and notice meeting of a standing committee of that body, if the members of the state body who are not members of the standing committee attend only as observers. So basically, it's saying that that's considered, that is not considered a problem. So the limitation of on only as observers is limited to the fact that you don't have a majority there.
Okay, now I wanna clarify this because some of our committees are, so our quorum of our commission is 8 or 9. We made our committees 8. A committee of 8 having a presentation from a 9th is a quorum. That cannot be done. But the way I read the law is, from what you just read, Tamar, is that if a smaller committee or somebody decides not to participate in the committee so somebody else can present, it has to be 8 or less. It can't be a quorum of the commission.
The committees, you have to attend as observers unless there's less than a quorum present between the two groups.
Right. So if a committee of 8 wants a presentation from another committee member, unfortunately, that triggers the law as a quorum.
The majority, yes, so that would.
So if you're a smaller committee like labeling, you could have somebody come over from organics, because that's not, they only have 5 or 6 members, and that would still be 8 or under.
Yes, and that, remember too, that information would have to be noticed on the agenda for that committee meeting.
Yes,
just
it would.
That they're going to be there and they're going to do that.
Michelle Lapis?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Specifically for the labeling commission, because I think they're going to need the input of the recycling and the composting committees. How many members are on that committee?
I think it's 5.
Okay, so then it wouldn't be an issue for the labeling committee to have the chairs of the other committees come and present. Okay.
Just notice it, yeah. Just notice it, yeah.
Very good, thank you, Commissioner Schneider.
They couldn't make a decision or take an official action anyway, because the majority is not there. A majority of the commission is not there.
Commissioner Schneider?
My questions went to, or go to, what would be standing agenda items that would facilitate communication between the 4 committees? And we talked about this on the labeling committee, that if we didn't mention an item, it couldn't be on at that meeting, it couldn't be on the following meeting's agenda. So clarifying that. But isn't there a way we can have a standing agenda item that says compost feeds back, lets labeling know what they're working on for the work of labeling, same thing for recycling to labeling, and for both of those committees then to market development? There should be some mechanism that is publicly noticed 10 days in advance that these topics will be brought up.
Okay, so, but you're still talking about presenting at a meeting, right? One of the committee meetings.
Correct.
I just want to make sure I understand the question. So you have committee meetings, you have a standing agenda. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So you have a standing agenda item, presentation from the labeling committee has a standing agenda item. Let's just even say presentations from other committees. And then when you notice which committee is going to be there, and you make sure that there's not a quorum available, which means if you really couldn't have anyone attending either, because you'd have some as attending as observers, but I don't think you guys have that many people doing that. So that would be okay. To have a standing, a standing agenda item, presentation from other committees, And then when you do the notice saying, it's being explicit about which committee is going to present at that meeting.
Okay. So as I'm the vice chair of both labeling and marketing, can we talk about specifics here, or our chair Sanborn go offline with our committees? I would just say a report from recycling, report from composting on both market development and labeling, and that makes sure that those committees are feeding us what we need to hear from them.
Yes. But you're gonna get that information and then present it at the meeting. Are you gonna be presenting it at the meeting or not? So the public will see.
Well,
what's
it
happening.
would be representatives from those committees on that. It turns out the only committee that doesn't have cross-pollination, as it were, is organics and labeling.
That makes sense.
That's our one problem area, that there's nobody serving on those two teams.
And the good news is the labeling committee is the one that has the least number of people and is least at risk of hitting 8 or more or 9 people to, you know, invite people in to present. So I think we figured this out. So if the committees want reports from other committees, one, you have to make sure that if you're inviting someone, it has to be 7 people on your committee to make no more than 8 present at any committee meeting. And 2, you have to publicly notice it properly, as was outlined by Commissioner Schneider.
And you said 8 is a quorum, so 8 is a majority, or 9 is a quorum.
9 is a quorum.
9 is a quorum.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, just real quick, I'm going to assume that 2 committee chairs could hold a discussion under that Bagley-Keene allowance for 2 members to discuss. So if the committee chairs wanted to communicate in advance. Okay, all right, great. That'll work. That would help a lot.
It's not considered a state body for purposes of Bagley-Keene.
Now just remember, when you do that though, you can't go talking to other people and have the serial meetings. It all has to be done in public. So, but this is a really good thing that we can talk committee chair to transfer information, and then have the committee chair report back to the full committee as well. If you have, especially an 8-person committee and you can't add a 9th for a presentation. Commissioner Osagura, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I think that's, I think you summed it up. What I was trying to talk. I mean, obviously the span breaker can be the subcommittee chair that provides what's being worked on and where they see overlap to the chair review, and then that's discussed at the commission meeting, so it avoids having a legal issue. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Great, thank you. And Commissioner Ward, do you have another question, comment?
Yeah, quickly, I think you got to, this is all helpful. I just wanted to understand, so long as we don't achieve a quorum, you can still have any commissioner attend one of the subcommittees and ask a question. Is that correct?
That was interesting because I was going to add that to the committee document. There is a recommendation that you don't attend a committee meeting. Commission member does not attend a 2-person committee meeting because that would make 3 people there, even if they're not getting involved. So the subcommittees, the 2-person subcommittees, they recommend that you. Yes, recommended that you don't have a.
So you do not have anybody attend.
Yeah, because this meeting doesn't have to be noticed. You're going to be just by yourself talking. It's not subject to the Open Meeting Act, so it's not an open meeting.
The qualifier on that, Ted, though, is, and correct me tomorrow if I'm wrong, but you can invite outsiders of the commission to if you need questions answered of the two people working on something. Is that right? No.
Because it's not 2 commission members, it's 2 people.
Gotcha. Okay, so we cannot meet in more than groups of 2 in a subcommittee.
And so that was my follow-up question. My understanding is we can talk to any commissioner of one commissioner, so long as we don't communicate in any way, nor does that other commissioner communicate in any way what was discussed that might lead to any sort of decision. And so I wanted to highlight that it's probably regular habit that the chairs and vice chairs of each of the subcommittees are regularly in communication. And so when you're trying to get something into the agenda, it's not going to be a specific agenda item. If you want to have a general conversation, you might want to consider communicating with somebody who isn't the chair or the vice chair, because that way you've got a little bit more security that there isn't going to be anything like a serial meeting.
Yeah, and I would add that every time you talk to another commissioner, you should discuss the serial meeting and making sure who's talking to whom. Because if you leave the meeting and then there's other side conversations from both of those commissioners to other commissioners, you've just got 4. So you've got to be very, very careful. This is what people get hung up on, and we could have an integrity problem for the commission. And I know it's complicated, but
it's complicated, but I know that that's like the biggest fear. As a matter of fact, the serial meeting is just as important as the notice, because the whole purpose is to have openness. So if you've got a quorum of committee members having meetings in any form whatsoever and making decisions outside of the public forum, then that's is not allowed.
Thank you. Commissioner Dell, I think you're next.
Right. So I'm the chair of the labeling committee, and we have put together a draft agenda to get ready to be posted for the next meeting, and a standing item on an update from the recycling committee, which will be easy because Jeff is the chair of that committee. And then, yes, we need someone who can give an update from the organics committee. And what I would like to ask is how to do this, to put on the agenda how we can add a person to our committee who would be on from the organics committee. And if that means we have to make the decision in this next commission meeting, that's fine if we can't do it today. But the simple answer, because we only have 5 people, is to add one person to our committee from the organics committee. So how can we go ahead? How can we add a person to our committee?
Yeah, it would be, I mean, I don't see any reason why you couldn't do it at this meeting, but except for time, maybe. But a commission would have to make a decision, just like you did before in the other meetings about the decision.
Well, we didn't notice that we were changing committee structure or who's on committees, but we did have this agendized item on committee reports. Is that, or is there another item where we could actually update and address the committee assignments, or do we have to put that on another agenda?
Well, it sounds like to me that you have a report from the labeling committee that they need another person.
Well done. Okay. Well, then it sounds like we have a request. We were having a legal discussion here, but it's led to a really good question of the commissioners from the chair of the labeling committee, Commissioner Dell, that they would like to add another member to their committee in order to have this cross-pollination. I believe it's from Organics Committee, correct? And I am fine with that. Is everybody okay with us voting on that? Is there a commissioner in particular who wanted to do that? I believe might have been Commissioner Lapis.
I'd be willing to do it. I think that looking at the commissioners who are on the organics committee, Kobe, myself, and Deborah Cadena are all just on the organics committee, so they would be good people to cross fertilize with the labeling.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea now, because if you're on too many committees, it does get really hard to deal with Bagley Keene and all that and serial meetings.
You have the compartment.
So, Kobe, if you're willing, I'd like to nominate you.
I was going to suggest the chair or vice chair, but if no one else is willing, then I would be willing to do it.
Chair of Organics. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Kalpakoff, what did you say?
I thought there was a first. I was going to second Kobe for the labeling committee.
And we can take a vote, and we're doing thumbs up or thumbs down. Is everybody okay with Kobe being added to the labeling committee? Pretty good? I love this thumbs up. Okay. And no thumbs down? I don't see any thumbs down. Okay, Commissioner.
The best part was that nobody asked Kobe if he was willing to do it.
The next meeting is August 20th, Kobe.
Do you accept Commissioner Sky?
Yes.
Okay, so we will put in the meeting notes that you have been unanimously voted to be put onto the labeling committee. Thank you for your help in the cross-pollination. We will now move on. Well done. to the last two legal questions before we get to the committee reports. And I'm sorry, but this is important in order for all of you to make sure that we're clear on how we run our committees. Two more legal questions on scope that came up at committee meetings. One is, can the scope of the Recycling Commission include commercial material?
So the overall responsibility of the commission to issue policy recommendations are pretty broad, and they don't limit explicitly, but the responsibility to identify regularly collected food service packaging products that are reusable, recyclable, or compostable is specifically listed to curbside programs.
So the answer, to be clear, is that the law was specific about curbside on recyclables, but it was more open on everything else.
It was pretty darn broad, I'd say.
So is the answer to does the scope of Recycling Commission include commercial recyclables? Is it yes or no?
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt really quick because that should actually be for the Labeling and Media Committee. I believe that's where it came up. And Jan, you can correct me if I'm wrong. That question about scope came up during your committee meeting and not the
It doesn't
Recycling
matter where it
Committee.
came up. I mean, it's just a question because for the whole commission, I think if we're having to bifurcate that only everything except curbside recyclables can be discussed as the commercial side of the waste stream can be addressed by the commission, that's odd.
It is odd, but I mean, it does specifically say that one of the recommendations is for the Recycling Commission to identify regularly collected food serving packaged products that are reusable, recyclable, or compostable and it's about curbside programs. So it talks about curbside programs. So I don't know if curbside includes, you asked the question about curbside, and so whatever curbside means, is that only limited to residential?
I think that's a good question, Nick. I think it's
because the statute does say that. I don't know why it says curbside recycling for that particular area, but it does. So,
well, my thought is that material is material, no matter where it's generated. But if commercial businesses can get curbside, can get service for these, then
okay, so when you asked me the question, it was asked, or is it limited to curbside? Can we do commercial, or is it limited to curbside? Okay, so that sounds like someone's thinking curbside only means residential, otherwise you wouldn't have the question. So I was responding to that. If commercial is considered curbside, it says curbside. So whatever curbside means, and you're the experts.
Can I defer to Commissioner Lapis right now to see if he's got?
So I think commercial is definitely included in curbside. The logic why commercial was called out specifically, or I'm sorry, why curbside was called out specifically in the section on identifying what is recyclable or compostable is, we didn't want, there's a drop off somewhere counting as the material being recycled, which has come up multiple times with things like polystyrene, where there might be a single drop off point somewhere, but it's not recyclable at the curbside. So I think commercial and residential are both curbside. And then anything outside of curbside, I think is still within the scope of the commission, just not within the scope of that specific requirement.
Yeah.
So to clarify, the answer to the question is yes, commercial materials are included in the scope of the commission. Thank you so much. And that was and so the last question that came up in committees, we want to make sure everybody hears the answer to is, can the scope of the Organics Committee look more broadly at GHG emissions?
You said beyond organics, right? You were thinking about things beyond organics.
Can the scope of the Organics Committee look more broadly at the GHG emissions? I would say yes, but we're asking.
I would too, except for that recommendation again. And a lot of times things wind up in statute a certain way, And then people who have been involved, you know, didn't think about, oh, people would think of it that way. And so it talks about, it talks about green gas emissions. It talks about them in the context of organics by referring to the statute. So that's why I would say it would be about limited to organics for the greenhouse gas emissions. But I have to say that doesn't make sense if we're talking about the whole 75%, even though we are concentrated a lot on, you know, the organics. So, but that the way it's phrased is phrased in terms of the organics recycling laws. So.
Well, okay. So the clear answer is, the way I read it is that organics and the whole commission can look more broadly at greenhouse gas emissions as part of the 75% goal. If that's part of the issue, if it's not, I don't know. Commissioner Lapis, do you have a thought on this? We did rate.
I'm not sure I'm following the distinction, but
I'm not sure I am either. And the other thing is that we already put in the guiding principles that are draft and going out for public comment that greenhouse gas emissions and even carbon sequestration is part of our charter. And this is a big question. If we are not supposed to be talking about greenhouse gas emissions, then we need to know now, because that's in our draft guiding principles. Commissioner Davis, do you have a thought on this?
Yeah, there's two references to greenhouse gas. Reference back to that focuses on organics, but the other is, I'm sorry, one is, yeah, the other reference I think is to the scoping plan, to the ARB scoping plan.
Right.
So so that's much broader than organics.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I would, unless Tamar, you can give us a reason not to. My understanding and the way John's reading it, and I think Nick is reading it, is that we would be able to address greenhouse gas emissions in any committee.
So it says consistent with 397.30.5, which is the ARB portion, methane emission reduction goals shall include the following targets. So it doesn't limit that to organics. The only thing that talks about organics is this reference to 1383, which is about organics.
Okay, so in the notes, we're going to.
Yeah. Sounds
so
like
in the notes, we'll document that the response here is that the commission has the authority to address greenhouse gas emissions entirely in any committee or the commission itself. Correct? Everybody good with that for tomorrow?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Excellent. Okay, so we're getting behind, but I think these were very important clarifications to know the rules of the road and what we do or do not have authority to do. So move on quickly.
It did help me to have the whole background, because I was just given, I'm actually in Atlanta right now on vacation, but I got the questions and they didn't have like a little more details, you know, so.
We appreciate you taking your time on vacation too, Tamar. Thank you again.
No, I'm working. Oh, it's counting at work today. It's work today.
Okay, we're going to have to move on to stay on schedule here. So I'm going to turn this over now to Chair of the Labeling and Public Education Committee, Commissioner Dell. Could you please give us an update on report from your committee?
Yes, thanks. Our committee had the first meeting, and so we will give the first report. The driver for our committee is that contamination is a huge problem in both recycling and organics management programs. Based on numbers I've seen from Florida, I'd estimate that the contamination in California might be $150 million a year problem, and I haven't even seen a number from organics management, but that's definitely a problem and growing. The focus of our committee is to make recommendations for Cal Recycle's public education program and policies related to product labeling to reduce contamination and improve organics management. So the scope that we chose for recycling was household curbside recycling, which would include residential, multifamily homes. But for organics, the scope that we delineated would be both curbside as well as commercial. And based on the last discussion that we just had there, I think that all fits in with the guidelines. We will be operating in parallel with the two other committees, the Recycling and Organics Committee, who will be defining what is recyclable and what is compostable. That will be their mission and their scope to do that. But our committee will work in parallel to make recommendations on how to improve the public's understanding of the outcomes of those committees, what is recyclable, what is compostable, and then make recommendations to improve product labeling to clearly communicate to California residents what is recyclable and what is compostable. And
Sounds
that's
good.
our
Just so
update.
that you know you're fading in and out, so you might want to hardwire your computer. But I heard it all. I think we got it all. Are there any commissioners' comments or thoughts on the report from Chair Dell? Are we going to get anything in writing on this that would summarize so that we can post it for the next commission meeting? You know, what the scope is of the committee and what you're tackling, so it's all public and transparent, and then you can just report
Yes.
out. Okay.
Yes, meeting minutes were taken by Cal Recycle. I reviewed them, made a few edits, and those will be posted publicly. Our next committee meeting is planned for August 20th.
At what time?
I think 9 Pacific. And I'm sorry, I'm also on vacation and I'm calling in from a hotel, and this is the best internet I can get.
Oh, no, that's good. I'm glad. Well, if you're at home, I was just suggesting that, but no, that's good. And thank you for calling in. Great report. So will that be a 2-hour meeting on the 20th?
Yes, it will.
Okay, very good. So that'll be 9 to 11 Pacific time. Excellent. Thank you. And we'll turn it over. I don't see. Oh, I do have one comment from Commissioner Ward, it looks like, on this report out. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. I just wanted to highlight, you can't be on all committees, and all the discussion with everybody happens here. And I proudly wear the rural hat. And so I just want to emphasize, when talking about labeling and clarity in what is recyclable and what is compostable, that I want everybody to be aware of the fact that with respect to, say, tabletop cartons, they have a sell-by date once you have a bale made up of those. And in our community, we're so small that it is not practical to be able to recycle those, because we just can't accumulate enough in order to get them to market. And so I know that there are folks who are very interested, particularly from the Carton Council, in having those labeled as recyclable statewide. And I just want to highlight that just because something is recyclable in some areas does not mean it's recyclable everywhere, and that is absolutely a concern to the rural areas.
Thank you. And I see one more comment by Commissioner Schneider.
Commissioner Ward, I think that's a great point. That goes back to our first commission discussion of, even if it can be recycled in 75% of the state, that could be just all the major metropolitan areas that then would dictate the correct labeling for smaller communities. So I think that, to me, that's a lens that we have to add in evaluating that. My example was, if all the big cities have a compost program that can use biodegradable bags, but a program specific to 3 cities just south of San Francisco can't, and in fact it's a bad contaminant, what are we going to do then? So does that mean at some point, I'm forgetting my word for this, we're going to have to figure out how this is really going to work? So you don't get stuck with bales of things you can't collect, and we don't have a program that actually causes major problems in anaerobic digestion. And that's not a committee report, but I will try to remember those on the labeling committee.
And that's, if I may, that's a very good point. But the discussion of what is recyclable and what is compostable, that discussion will be in those 2 committee meetings. And then how to convey that would be in the labeling and public education meeting. So I think that's really something that needs to get nailed down in the recycling and the organics committees.
And I would urge in the
Yeah,
essence of time that the committee chairs discuss that and work on that differentiation. Commissioner Lapis?
Yeah, just two quick comments. So the definition of recyclable and compostable is tied to the definition in SB 1335. And so that's relevant for both Ted's point and Ann's point. For Ann's point, that you're allowed to have different regional variations on what is recyclable or what is compostable. And to Ted's point, the material has to be of sufficient quantity to move in the market in order for it to be considered recyclable. And again, the regional aspect comes in as well.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, thank you very much, Chair Dell. I think we look forward to more work on this committee, and the interplay between the other committees is going to be important, especially for this one, for labeling and public education. So we'll move on now to Chair Don Levy for the Recycling Committee, please, in your report.
All right, thank you very much. Yeah, the Recycling Committee met. They asked for volunteers for a chair. Everybody stepped back, and I seemed to be volunteered, and I was given the controls of a plane that I never flew before, but I think we did pretty well. We had a few public comments. One was on promoting reuse, and the other was asking for us to consider waste energy, gasification, pyrolysis. But then after some discussion of the committee members, I think we all agreed that we were going to focus on the curbside material and not wander off into much bigger areas that could slow us down. So the discussion was just on the curbside programs. We talked about commercial and multifamily. I think in most municipal arrangements, the residential programs are kind of the lead dog that blend into the commercial and the multifamily. So I think if we just focus on the residential programs, we are going to be better off. We said we would avoid industrial programs. We're not going to look at any of the materials collected through industrial or roll-off operations, because those are definitely niche material. So we are going to avoid those. Let me back up just a second. With myself as the chair, we also had Alex Oseguera. He will be the vice chair of this committee in case I cannot attend. As Nick just mentioned, he brought out, I think the best piece of information that we can all go off of is the Public Resources Code 42370.2. And it has a 7-step or 7 criteria that will help everybody determine what is recyclable, what's not recyclable. The 75% threshold, I think that's going to be key, not just for the recycling side, but even for the organics. And it'll really bring in the importance of some of the larger operations in the state to hopefully work not only with the commission, but just recognize what can be recycled, what is being recycled, and not try and use their programs for diversion and collecting material that is not ultimately being recycled. But the 7 criteria is if the material is accepted at local recycling programs, is it accepted at local recyclers, is the material actually separated into individual bales? And one of the topics that we just bring up is number 3 through 7, plastics. We're going to look and see if any of the operations, any of the curbside programs are actually sorting 3 through 7. And that was one of the data requests that we've made to CalRecycle to see if any curbside programs are actually separating that material. Then looking at the different material types to see if they're being reprocessed into new materials. with the manufacturers having some input on that. And then is there a market that will maintain value? So look at the different grades of material to see if there is a viable market, or is there only one facility in the country that might be able to take the material. It might be deemed that if there's only one facility in the United States that can take a certain grade of plastic, that might not be a viable market. So that might disqualify a certain item from being deemed recyclable, and then ultimately identifying if the material is toxic in the process. So we talked about a matrix, coming up with a matrix, so we could start looking at different curbside programs, or excuse me, all the curbside programs that have material collected in them, and then just doing a checklist to see if certain material types check the 7 boxes. So if we started talking about cardboard boxes, that's probably going to check all 7 boxes. But if we start talking about number 3 bottles, that might not check all the boxes. So I think we'll, at the next meeting, have a draft of a potential matrix that we could look at. And I think that'll help expedite the process of identifying what materials can go in curbside programs. I know there's some curbside programs out there that have 54, 55 items listed. One even has PVC pipes, which I know is not a recyclable item at this point. So we'll start looking at those. I think our committee can move pretty quick on it. So we could determine whether items are recyclable or not recyclable. But then again, local jurisdictions will ultimately have the ability to include material if they have a local market for it. So if somebody wants to collect milk cartons, that would be their choice. But I think on a statewide basis, we'll look at and come up with recommendations of what can and cannot be recycled. We're going to have some stakeholders present, and one of the points I wanted to just open up for discussion is when we have stakeholders present to the committee, do we want all of them presenting to our committee, or maybe the not so controversial ones present to the recycling committee? But then if we start addressing plastics, maybe that's a stakeholder, or a large processor, that's a stakeholder that we would want to have present to the commission as a whole. So every commissioner can hear what, I'll say, the city of Los Angeles is doing, or what the Plastics Council has to say about which plastics can and cannot be recycled. So I just wanted to open that up for some discussion on who should be presenting to the committee and who we would like presenting to the commission.
I have one question for you, Jeff. Is are you guys not talking about redemption centers then? I didn't hear that.
No. In our committee, we will talk about redemption centers and the impact. I was going to address that with our data requests, and looking at certain counties that have a high number of redemption centers, to try and look at how much glass, how much CRV containers are going through the programs versus, and looking at jurisdictions that have very few redemption centers, to look at the amount of containers that are going through those programs. And
thank you. I just want to make sure one of the committees was handling that, because I know it had been brought up by the commission before.
Yeah, because we think, you know, the core of the bottle bill is litter reduction, taking deposits from consumers and returning those deposits. Curbside programs are an option, but they shouldn't be the first option.
Thank you.
So we
Okay,
will be addressing the recycling centers.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure we knew that for sure it was in there. And Carol, I see that you have probably a public comment, but before we get to that, I think Chair Dunleavy has asked us a question, and I just want to start the conversation because I've had it with several of the chairs of the committees. We will have more people request time in front of this commission and the committees than we will have available if we are going to stay on time and deliver the product we've been asked to provide to the legislature and Cal Recycle. So I will just throw out there that my suggestion to the committees and the chairs is that you be very, very focused on your vision and mission that you've outlined, your scope of work, and what you want to deliver by January. Well, actually, we should have it before then. We're probably going to need it by early December in order to compile the report, et cetera. And that you might want to be very clear in what data needs you need, who you need to present, who do you need to get information from, and what questions do you have for them, and then actually email or request in writing their response that everybody can see in the format that you find helpful, that can be on an agenda. And then you can ask questions of them live where everybody can see what they responded. And then you can ask questions based on their responses. If you open this up to having everybody present who wants to present, I think it's going to get very hard to get all the information that you need. I just think I'd just advise thinking about what do you really need to make decisions, and make sure you're asking those people, but you might want to get responses in writing and then be able to ask questions from that. So I'll just throw that out there. That's how I tend to do it, just to make sure I can, plus when it's in writing, everybody can see it and it's very clear. So if I know that Karu had a comment and probably a public comment at this point, and then we'll open it up to commissioners to discuss this.
Yes, thank you. So this comment is from Corinne Foster from the City of Oceanside. Would it be within the, and then this is for the labeling committee, would it be within the scope of the labeling committee to not just address recyclability, but also better labeling about the best buy dates, etc., to provide greater transparency on edible food? Also, why focus on just household for recycling, where the major portion of the contamination stem from the high volume of recyclable material generated by commercial customers? Our operations indicate commercial has some of the highest rates of contamination. End of the comment.
Thank you. And we've already answered the question about commercial will be included. So I guess the best by date suggestion we'll throw to Commissioner Dell, that's something you could consider in your labeling committee. Okay, so then we can open it up. I know there's an commissioner, it looks like Commissioner Lapis, or it looks like maybe, oh, I got a few here. So it looks like commissioners, go back to Commissioner Sky. Do you have a comment?
Very briefly, I would just suggest that if the chair of a committee feels that a presentation would be more suitable for the commission, that they discuss it with you, Chair Sanborn, and you can decide whether that makes sense or not.
Yeah, I think Vice Chair Vallier and I would be the ones to definitely, I know that's three of us, but we are chair and vice chair, and I think it would be good to have both our reads on that. I just do worry that we'd take up too much time with presentations and not enough about what questions we need to ask and answer. Are you okay with that? If, and I believe Tamar, that would be appropriate, right? If a committee chair asks the chair and vice chair of the commission, do you want to see this on the next commission meeting? That would be an appropriate question, and we could even CC Cal Recycle staff.
Yeah, that would work.
Okay, so committee chairs, feel free to request that if you think it's worthy of that. My suspicion is, our time is just so limited that we just really be thoughtful about if we all need to hear the whole thing and how long that might be. But you have definitely, we look for those requests. So Commissioner Lapis, you had a comment?
Yeah, I was gonna second Colleen's comment about the best by dates. I know it's something that this group as a whole hasn't worked on very much, but we've worked on that quite a bit at CAW with NRDC and some other folks. So I think I might just submit a recommendation to the labeling committee on that.
Great, thank you. And Commissioner Ward?
Yes, the organics committee has a focus area on food rescue, and I think that labeling question is fairly appropriate to food rescue. But in general, for all of the committees, I think we're going to be challenged, as Chair Sanborn keeps reminding us, to produce the documents we've been tasked with. So I think there's no doubt that each of our committees going to have to prioritize what can we get done first, and to try to meet our legislative mandates, and then possibly what additional issues do we want to address after we get that first report out, so that we can start gathering that information and putting it into context, but not necessarily trying to do everything all at once.
Right, because we are appointed for 2 years. So we just want to make sure we hit that first deadline and then maybe prioritize other things later. Thank you. So we can get back to the question that was posed by Commissioner Dunleavy about the presentations. Have we decided then that each committee head will email the chair and vice chair and CalRecycle if you wish to have something put on the commission agenda, and we'll go from there. Otherwise, you can handle your committees as you see fit. And again, you've heard my advice about possibly asking people to put things in writing, and answering questions that you really have that you feel you need to answer in order to make decisions on policy advice. That can really streamline things and also keep it transparent. Is that helpful, Chair Dunleavy?
Yes, and just a question for clarification. So if Commissioner Oseguera and I talk about a strategy as far as lining up stakeholders to present to the committee, and then one of us talks to you about that plan that we think it's better to have, say, glass and aluminum talking to our committee, but having people from the fiber side and the plastic side present to the entire commission, are we getting into a serial meeting at that point?
I think as long as the email request is CC'd to CalRecycle and it's the chair and vice chair that you've delegated, the commission has delegated the authority to kind of decide what goes on the agenda. Obviously, that's normally what chairs and vice chairs do. So
Okay.
Tamara, unless you have any thought on that, it seems fine to me.
No, I think we discussed that the last time we talked about the agendas.
Okay. Because what we're trying to get set by Friday is a few stakeholders to talk at our next meeting, which is scheduled for August 21st. We're trying to get some people from glass packaging, possibly strategic materials to speak. Also some people from can manufacturers and possibly one of the aluminum mills, just to talk about aluminum containers. And I think their focus will probably be on the quality of material coming out of redemption centers that they really like, and some concerns about contamination from material coming from curbside programs. So it kind of opens up the pathway to talk about the need to support redemption centers, and then also starting to address contamination.
I guess my thought would be you can put anything you want on your committee agenda. But again, just making sure you know what they're going to present to you, because if they are allowed to just talk about anything they want, it may not be what your committee needs to hear in order to make decisions.
Yeah.
And could take a lot of time, especially with that many presenters. So completely up to you.
So from a timing standpoint, if we ask for a written comment on what they're going to be presenting, how far in advance of the agenda do they need to provide that so it can be posted?
You can email them and say, we'd like to have you present. These are the things that we'd like you to present on. And this is the time you will have. And if you need more, or you want to present about something else, you need to let us know what that is. And then you have to decide. Yeah.
And then we're going to look at both the buyers of the material, but then we also want to talk to the processors, and we want to make sure that we have a mix of larger processors and independent processors, those that are in very urban areas. And then we also want to hear from those that are in the rural areas and what their challenges are, and any comments or suggestions that might be helpful to our committee. So we're going to be trying to line up those people to meet with us.
Okay, my only suggestion again is just focus on the end game about our advice and making sure you're getting the information you need to give good advice in the report. And I do see we have a comment by Commissioner Davis. Would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, just real quickly, as Commissioner Donlevy was speaking, I was thinking of we're kind of circling around a similar list for the Market Development Committee, and so I just want to be sure, and I apologize, I've been a little unfocused over the last few days, but be sure that we're getting the agendas for all the committees, because I definitely would like to listen in, and I understand I can't participate, but I could observe that some of those discussions that Commissioner Donlevy was mentioning. So long as all the commissioners are getting all the agendas, and
everybody in the public gets the agendas. Everybody, they're all posted on the website.
Everybody on the mailing list. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Very good.
So again,
we have to wrap it up. Yeah.
The next meeting, August 21st, we did do a data request from Cal Recycle just to look at material coming from certain counties that have a high volume of recycling centers versus counties with a low volume of recycling centers, just to look at what's going through the recycling centers versus the curbside programs, because I think there's probably a higher percentage of glass going through curbside programs where there are not recycling centers. So I think we'll want to promote the recycling centers to help the curbside operators relieve the burden of glass on their processing systems. So
okay. We're going to need to move on to the other committees.
Okay.
Sorry, we're running out of time.
Okay, Commissioner Oseguera, did I miss anything?
Nope, you got it.
Okay, thank you.
Very good, thanks. And I would like to ask Cal Recycle staff to please make sure on the website, I've just looked and I'm not seeing the dates and the times of the next committee meetings, but I think that would be very helpful to at least, even though we don't have information yet to post that there will be whenever the committees are meeting and the times on the public website, so people know when those were scheduled from the first committee meetings, if that's okay. Appreciate it. So we've got to keep moving in order to stay on schedule. Organics Committee is next, and I'll turn it over to Chair Potashner, and I would like you to also please, I think I forgot to go back to you on that first item and respond to Mr. Edgar's comments, or and I think he had asked about the report that Cal Recycle is doing, and I know he had asked it quite a while ago. So maybe if you could start with that and remind us what the answer was there, and then you can move into your report.
So sure. On the issue around the report that's due from Cal Recycle, I believe it was Teresa Billy from Cal Recycle has indicated that report will be coming soon. And there's been impacts obviously with the pandemic, and they're doing their best to get that report as quickly as possible. So on to the committee, we had a very similar election process as the recycling committee. At the end of the day, I ended up with the chairship. Ted Ward is the vice chair. We had robust public comment from local governments around 1383 rollouts and capacity, manufacturers of compostable products, and then compost operators and their industry association, the California Compost Coalition. At the end of the day, after hearing all those comments, the committee decided to try to break up the vast scope of work that we're looking at into 4 topics. Those 4 topics are compostable packaging, so that will include definitions, labeling, introduction into local programs as 1383 gets rolled out, operational impacts at the compost and AD facilities. The other 3 topics are food rescue and waste prevention, infrastructure from a capacity and planning perspective, permitting perspective, and financing perspective, and then lastly, finished products. So that's finished compost, market development, and procurement. There's procurement requirements for local governments in 1383, and those issues will get taken care of in that topic. So our next meeting, we're going to tackle compostable packaging. And the way we agreed to go about this is bring in stakeholders in that realm first. have presentations and allow for that back and forth Q&A with the committee members. We've extended invitations to Cal Recycle to talk about SB 1335 and definitions that they came up with or are coming up with around compostable packaging. The compostable manufacturers, we're bringing in the executive director of BPI. We're still looking for a non-BPI manufacturer. If folks have ideas on that, welcome those ideas. Local jurisdictions, and especially with rolling out 1383, we're having RCRC present from the rural perspective, and then I just heard from Alex Kalou from the City of LA. He will present on how the City of LA is looking at rolling out 1383 and including compostable packaging into their program. We would like to get a customer/generator presenter. I've put an invitation out to Cisco, which is the largest food and packaging distributor for restaurants and grocery stores in the state. Hope to hear back later today. And then lastly, from the compost operator standpoint, we have Bill Camarillo from Agerman, who operates a number of facilities in Southern California, to talk about the impacts of compostable packaging on his operations. So the intent is to get those presentations done in our next meeting on August 21st from 10 to noon. It's a lot to do in one meeting. But we think that'll facilitate a better understanding of the committee on the issue of compostable packaging and help generate further data requests from the committee. And then in further committees, we'll again work on food rescue and waste prevention, infrastructure capacity, permitting, planning, and financing, and then finally organics products, procurement, and market development.
Excellent. Thank you. Well done. That's a lot of work, and good luck trying to squeeze all of it into the next 2-hour committee meeting. That's a lot of presentations. And I'm going to ask the commissioners to help me stay on schedule because we're running pretty over at this point. So unless there's any comments or questions from Chair Potashner on this item, we will move on. Thank you very much to the last committee, the Market Development Committee. And our chair of the committee is Commissioner John Davis. So we'll go ahead and turn it over for a brief summary of the outcome of that committee meeting.
Yeah, we did meet Monday afternoon. All 6 committee members were present. I was selected as chair, and Ann Schneider is the vice chair. Matt Hennigan from Cal Recycle, deputy director for local assistance and market development, gave us an overview of Cal Recycle programs, and we asked that we receive a copy of the presentation to post. We received a number of comments on that presentation, I think about 4, and then 5 on the discussion following to determine the scope of our focus. And I think we're going to continue to work on that at our next meeting, work on the scope. One filter will be priorities for the committee based on material type, programs, and programs, and then also the focus in the statute that says we should make market development recommendations in line with the language of Public Resources Code Section 42005, which is pretty explicit and quite broad and overlaps on a number of topics that have already been brought up. So we'll be focusing on those 2 scoping areas at our next meeting. We were asked to respond to a couple of the previous public comments, which I covered earlier. However, we also took up an item that was referred to the Recycling Committee as far as the AFPA letter, and I'll discuss that. But when we got to the discussion of data and information needs, we decided that we really would like to start getting a map on materials processing sites, and also hopefully getting manufacturing end user data within California, in-state, a map, a list of facilities. Now that, we're going to start with what Cal Recycle can provide, and then I suspect we'll be reaching out to the industry groups. I jumped over our discussion of stakeholder. I'm looking at the draft or the preliminary draft minutes, and we are going to be asking AFPA to make a presentation at the next meeting, because I think both Commissioner Potashner and I, when talking about our priorities for scope, we both thought that beginning to have a focus around paper pulping opportunities is really important going forward. So we're going to cut some time for, hopefully for AFPA, and I made an initial effort to contact the person who was offered in that letter from them. So our next meeting is August 24th, and it's a 3-hour meeting starting at 9 a.m.
Excellent. Thank you for your report. Are there any commissioners' comments or questions on the report out from Chair Davis on market development? I don't see any. So with that, thank you all very much. Excellent job. I watched all of them. I thought you all did a great job. And thank you so much to those who were, and congratulations to the chairs and vice chairs for your work and leadership and keeping things moving. We greatly appreciate it. So with that, we are pretty behind here now. So I want to keep moving to our next agenda item. I think it could be short though, and we could make up some time. And this is a potential review, item number 9, potential review and approval of changes to the charter. This was something we agreed would just be a standardized item so that if we did want to change the charter, we could. I didn't have anything. I didn't hear any comments from any of you on things you would want to change. If you do want to change anything in the charter, please let us know now or bring anything up under this item. Hearing none, seeing none in the chat box, I take that as everybody is okay with the charter as it is, and that will save us 10 minutes of time so we can move on to the next item. And we were going to take a break. I would suggest at this point, since we're about half an hour behind, we keep going. Is everybody okay with that? Thumbs up. Very good. Because you can always take a break, turn off your camera for a minute if you need it. Thank you very much. So we just made up 15 minutes and we'll move on to our legislative item. This we will not probably be able to go 40 minutes. This is the review and the discussion of pending and proposed legislation related to the commission's mandates. And we were given an outline of bills, 5 bills that the CalRecycle staff believe do fit our mandate. These are all pending bills. So I'm just going to open it up. I'm going to read each bill and then open it up for comments and questions. So the first one is AB 793 by Member Ting on recycling plastic beverage containers, minimum recycled content. Is there anybody who'd like to speak to this bill? Have thoughts on this bill? Want to share a position you've taken? Anybody? No comments. Okay. Then we can move on to Assembly Bill 2287 by Assembly Member Susan Angman, who formed this commission. This is about changes to the date for our commission's recommendations and other changes. And I see Commissioner Lapis, would you like to speak to this?
Sure. So we're CAW is co-sponsoring this bill with BPI, and it was originally about compostable product labeling, but there are 2 things that are of relevance, of special relevance to everybody. The commission, or sorry, the legislation is proposing that the recommendations from the commission be sort of preliminary recommendations by the end of this year on our original timeline, and then giving us an extra 6 months for a formal report, which I think will probably result in a better work product. And so assuming the legislation passes, that will affect our process here. And then there's also some wording about public process in there, but I think we're already pretty much committed to that and following it.
Public process, and I'm sorry, what regard?
I'm sorry, public process for this commission, including sharing recommendations for public input before we adopt them, That was a request from some manufacturers and other folks, and we were already basically doing that, so not much of a change on that.
Okay, and I see.
And actually, I'm sorry. Hey, one more thing I forgot to mention. There's also a provision in the bill that allows but does not require CalRecycle to issue guidance on what is deceptive labeling. And so I think some of the recommendations around compostable plastics and around recyclability could feed into recommendations that CalRecycle could issue under this bill as well.
Is that something that CalRecycle has the authority to mandate, or is it just give guidance?
It's give guidance, just partially just to reduce the cost of the bill. But there are existing laws and there's existing enforcement authority by the district attorneys and the attorney general's office. So it's guidance that could then be used by local enforcement agency.
Okay. And I know one of the questions that had come up earlier was our authority as a commission to advise the legislature. Is that in there as well?
It is. I'm not sure if it's in the version in print. I apologize, forgot to mention it. So yeah, we're also adding that the commission may advise any legislative body or any regulatory agency at the state, local, or federal level.
I think that's a really great addition. I think a lot of you had mentioned to me that you all thought that that's partly why we formed the commission, was to do that. So thank you, Nick, for your leadership on that. And I believe Commissioner Ferrante also has a comment.
Yeah, Nick, I just want to know what to you, what does initial recommendations mean? What does that look like? What form does that take?
Yeah, I think that's up to everybody. But I just, you know, the way I was envisioning it was that it might be hard to get a full report done by the end of this year. But some high level recommendations of policies that need to be pursued, we could probably come up with.
I mean,
but it's not explicit. It's up to the group.
Okay, I mean, yeah, would it be something that we'd be locked into to then expand on in the formal report, or you know? Okay.
I mean, I don't believe so. But again, that would be up to the group.
I can add that I think we're beginning a 2-year legislative session in December, really. And any comments that we provide to them are going to be less useful in June than they are in January. And I think everybody here was committed to working as hard as we can. And I think this would give us a break. But my thinking is that, and it's on actually the next agenda item, discussion of scheduling and process for the report. I think I will just mention that I think the way there are ways to do a full report in January. We can certainly enhance it and change it, I think, at any time. These are just legislative mandates. So the commission, as fast as we can work and get things to them early and in January, the better off we'll all be, because it'll be much harder for them to do anything with it in June. It might be more well thought out, but it might also be late. So just, some things to think about. Any other thoughts on this item or the bill? Okay, I don't see any others. And where is that, Nick, in process, that bill?
It's in the Senate Environmental Quality Committee. I don't believe it's actually been scheduled yet, but if it does get scheduled, that would be for August 11th. They are trying to reduce the number of bills they're hearing, so it being scheduled is not guaranteed, but it has been on consent moving through the process so far.
It could be as soon as August 11th, and it isn't publicly noticed. That's less than 7 days. Okay. All right. So everybody, make sure I think you should read that. Make sure you understand, because it looks like it's going to go. So thank you for that. Mr. Wood,
Just
you have
a
a comment?
comment.
Yeah, sorry, I just saw that you added it. So Commissioner Dunleavy and then Commissioner Ward.
Yeah, with our task, I would like to push to get something done by January. to have an extension, I don't think it's going to be helpful for us. I would rather be late on a report that's due in January than to try and be early on a report that could be due in June. So I would like to keep the January target. And if we're a week or two late, that's much better than producing something in June. And Commissioner Sanborn, as you had mentioned, we need to get started on this in January. So that's just my comments.
Thank you. Commissioner Ward?
Just concurring, totally agree. I think we should make the recommendations we can make as soon as we can make them, and then flesh it out as time goes on.
Thanks. And one of the thoughts I had is if the bill is passed, I mean, I just hope that we're able to communicate directly to Cal Recycle, Cal EPA, and the legislature as soon as we decide on something that we think is important. Why do we have to wait for a date to submit a report? Is there a memo we could send, for example, to the author of the bill or to all the legislators saying we've decided this is our recommendation, this has consensus, and just send it over as quickly? I'm not sure, Commissioner Lapis, if that's been discussed at all.
I mean, I believe that falls under the scope of the commission can make recommendations. I even think we might have put at any time or something along those lines. Jeff, to your point, I agree. I think the thinking was that there are going to be things that are low-hanging fruit that we can all agree on quickly. And there are things that are just wonky and complicated that are going to take longer. And we don't want to hold up the low-hanging fruit because some of the other stuff will take us longer. So there's definitely still recommendations by January, but if we want to punt on some of the more complicated stuff, we have that ability for 6 months.
So I would suggest, since all the commissioners obviously will care a lot about this bill, is there a way, as soon as you can, to share the full language?
Sure, yeah. And the only reason the full language is not in print is just the logistics of amending it. But I will track it down and not sure how to share it.
Yeah, I mean, because that's less than a week away, and I'm sure everybody probably has thoughts on it. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for the update. I think we should probably move on to the third bill, which is AB 1612 by Manshine, and this is the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund Recycling Appropriation. Commissioner Lapis, did you have any thoughts on this? Or is this not your bill?
I mean, I have thoughts on all the bills, but I just, for the sake of the time of the committee, I will keep them to myself.
Okay, I see Commissioner Sky. Would you like to speak?
Yeah, and I think you meant Assembly Bill 2612.
Sorry, yep, I did.
This is a bill that LA County co-sponsored with CSAC and the rural counties, and it's our attempt to provide it what we know is additional needed funding to get infrastructure developed for both recycling and organics management. The industry and by extension, our ratepayers are getting a double punch between China National Sword and the 1383 mandate without anywhere near the level of support that we need to develop either the upgraded infrastructure to meet contamination standards to have viable products on the recycling side, or significant new infrastructure developed for organics management. Our goal was to allocate additional funding from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, and it's very appropriate since we know that recycling and organics management are amongst the most cost-effective methods for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And also carbon sequestration, love to put a plug in for that. Unfortunately, with COVID-19, the bill was sidelined, so it doesn't look like it'll move forward this year. We are still trying to push for additional allocation from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. We're hoping that there'll be potentially an opportunity to have that discussion, but again, the budget priorities have been so realigned and reprioritized due to COVID-19. It's very hard to get any interest on anything else in terms of a budget. But we do hope to bring this bill back in the next legislative session, and hopefully we'll fare a little bit better.
Great, thank you. I don't see any comments or questions from commissioners, but I can ask you, how would this, if let's say one of our recommendations is about having, you know, a producer responsibility approach on a particular item, that they would really be responsible for the infrastructure and it wouldn't be a cost to government. Is this bill, how would that interplay work?
I think that there really needs to be an all hands on board approach to developing this infrastructure. This was a token amount of 200 million per year, and we know that we need billions of dollars in investment. So that should be coming from all sectors, whereas right now it really falls entirely to ratepayers. And I know that jurisdictions have made that work in some areas. Some jurisdictions, the ratepayers are more able to support those additional costs. In other areas, it's much more difficult. And, you know, that comes back to the issue of equity. In areas that have a much bigger gap in terms of the need, so that Southern California and more rural areas have a much bigger gap than other areas in terms of the capacity. So this is trying to address that.
Thank you. And I see a question from Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to first of all follow up on what Commissioner Lapis mentioned as Kobe was talking. I was thinking about some information I wanted to share just with the Market Development Committee. I'm not sure how to do that, whether I can do that directly or whether I have to send it to CalRecycle staff to send on. And I think when you asked if Commissioner Lapis could share the latest copy of that legislation, I'm not sure he was, I think I heard him say he wasn't sure how to do that either. So maybe we could clarify that process.
Is Tamar still on? Can she help us from CalRecycle?
We did receive one document from Commissioner Dell. So, but I think that kind of went around the horn and didn't come directly to us. But
I'm sorry.
So where did it come? Where did it come from?
John?
Yes, maybe Commissioner Dell could talk about the process.
So yes, could you just give me a little more detail?
Sure. Sure. I believe I followed the rules by I asked CalRecycle how to share information with the committee and the public, and they posted my email with links to information in the public comment section of the committee. So that's how I shared information, the whole world as well as the committee.
I was actually thinking about the survey that went to the full commission.
Yeah, it also went to the public. It was posted in the public domain, the same email.
Right.
So you did that by sending it to CalRecycle staff, who then included it on the commission. Yes. I'm trying to keep up.
Yeah.
So that's the process we should follow. If we want to send something to the commission, we send it to CalRecycle. Who specifically at CalRecycle?
So Audrey and Paulina is who I've been sending everything to, and then CC Richard and I, so we know what's happening. And then they'll post everything to everybody.
Yeah, Nick, it should go to the statewide commission inbox, the AB 1583 commission, and be sure those documents are accessible to help us get them out quickly.
And accessible is, what does that mean?
As noted on the last or one of the earlier agenda items, we're going to send you guys a link to what that means.
Right. So the sooner we get that, the better, because they're already trying to figure out how to communicate safely.
Thank you. And I believe, Paulina, we are actually able to put the links if the document or information is to another third party's website, we can put a link to that website right away, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Once the public navigates away from our website, I believe there's a disclaimer on our webpage that we aren't responsible for the third party
Yeah,
navigation.
so please don't submit like newsletters or other things like that. What we would makes it a lot faster for the CalRecycle staff is if you submit a link and you've posted it somewhere else. A lot easier for them. And I think we've got a comment by Commissioner Medrano.
What will be the procedure for sending a document just to our committee?
To your committee members?
Yes.
Just to your committee members?
Yes.
You can send, you can communicate with your committee members in terms of sharing information. We just have to make sure we don't have a quorum of the board, a quorum of the commission and making decisions.
Okay, well, this is a little different. I think everybody's wanting to understand this. So when we have two people on a committee, they can go and talk unlimited about their issue, develop documents as long as they end up on the committee agenda and transparent public. And then that also gets referred to the commission. And then, so if you want to communicate with your committee directly, you can via email. Is that what you're saying, Tamar? They can, outside of a posted agenda.
What we've been doing is having CalRecycle send information out. What you're asking, can you have a mini meeting before the meeting? Is that what you're asking? Because
No, if I wanted to share a document or some kind of guiding document to my commission only, how do I do that?
We've been suggesting that CalRecycle send it to everyone to sort of avoid it being a serial meeting issue.
Okay.
We made that guidance before we had all these subcommittees, so I don't know if we need to revisit it or not, if we're going to be talking about a lot of traffic, so.
Well, let's just think of it now.
One quick follow-up. So when does the document have to be made available to the public? I think is a follow-up to Manuel's question.
Oh, you mean what the information that he shares with the it only has to be posted and it needs to be made available to, it will be made available to the public if they submit a Public Records Act request. What you're asking is about posting it with the agenda, right?
No.
Yeah, so the question is, at what point, when the commissioners are sharing items between each other, does CalRecycle need to make that public and post it on our website?
We shouldn't have to post it on the website until they actually discuss it at a meeting as part of the notice reaction, but it is available.
Well, this is where one of the things is, if we want to be thoroughly transparent and not force people to do public information requests, whatever a committee member wants to send to their committee, I'm not sure why we wouldn't just send it out to the listserv as another data point, or.
That is what we've been doing, right, Paulina?
Yeah, correct. That's what we've been doing.
Yeah.
That's what I would recommend we do, because that way there's nothing that's hidden from public view. Everything is transparent. So if you want to share with your committee members something, it goes to everybody and all the commissioners, really. If that's okay.
So we would send it through the staff who we're working with on the committee, the lead staff person for the committee, and then they would handle it appropriately.
I would suggest you share it with the chair. The chair then forwards it to Paulina and Audrey and CC me and Richard, and then we know what's happening and it goes out to everybody. But it can be tagged as this is information for the Market Development Committee. We just want everybody.
Because our committee, the lead staff person for our committee, Kate Wilkins. So do I send it to her or Audrey and Paulina?
Oh, that's right, because we have different committee staff.
Yeah, I think it'd be more from my perspective. The more frequently I can deal with one person.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Yep, that sounds good. So the committee chairs would refer it to whoever this CalRecycle staff is that's, working with that committee. Does that answer your question, Manuel?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, I think the next commenter is Commissioner Lapis.
I'm afraid that sounds like a little bit of a bottleneck, especially if we have a lot of conversations. I mean, if we're having these committee meetings regularly, they're really basic conversations, like comments like, hey, Tuesday's the deadline for anything you want to see added to the agenda. And then there's also this report by this organization, it seems useful. I think forcing that to go through CalRecycle staff is just sort of an
Doesn't take that
unnecessary
long.
bottleneck. Yeah.
It doesn't take that long, just so you know, but here's what my worry is they will get inundated with public information requests because the public wants to know what data we're using to base our decisions off of. So if commissioners find that something's important enough to share with the other commissioners, it probably should be made public right away, because then everybody knows what we're seeing. And they may be saying, hey, I want to send that report to the commission, but they will know that we've already seen it.
So maybe we don't forward all of them to the list, but have them posted somewhere. Because I'm not sure people on the list want to see every correspondence about, dialogue in the commission. So have them public and posted, but maybe not forwarded to the list.
I don't know that you want to send all of that to the list. And what I'm understanding you talking about, like you're talking about, oh, we should do the meeting on this time, or I saw this and can we talk about this at the committee meeting? I don't know that all those little things have to be, I wouldn't say that those things had to be provided. But if you have a report or anything that you're using that you're going to be supporting a decision or a discussion that you're going to be having at the meeting, then to the extent you have those types of documents, then they should be made available.
Okay, so why don't we do this then? So we'll agree that each committee chair will go through CalRecycle. CalRecycle will send the information to those committee members and post it on the website, but not send it to the listserv. So if people want to know exactly what we're sending around in committees, they can see it, but we're not going to flood the listserv with these items. Is that the agreement? Is everybody okay with that? Thumbs up?
So you're not talking about individual emails, right? You're talking about the documentations or reports or things that you're going to be using to make decisions.
Correct.
Because
and I would caution people to be very careful about communications that are not public. It creates a lot of work.
Get the information from the other committee member and stuff. Then you don't go back and talk to them about, oh, this is what I think about it. This should be, you're getting it out ahead of time so that you can discuss it when you have the meeting.
Yep, and I'm going to do it
backwards and forwards with emails discussing it.
Okay, so the final answer is we are going to give something to the committee chair. Committee chair will send to your point person at CalRecycle. They'll send to the commissioners and they'll post on the website. Sound good? And that should be in the notes so everybody's clear. And we are going to do a time check because we're running late. So Commissioner Davis, real quick.
Yeah, I think I understand the distinction, and thank you, Tamar, for the statement that it's documentation and reports used to form decisions. So if somebody on the Market Development Committee wanted to know what time our next meeting started, would they have to, well, they could pose that to Kate, I guess. She would know, right? Or can they communicate directly with me?
Well, yeah, they can communicate. Have you been getting copied on communications, Audrey, between the members?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, so all of that's available if there was a public record request, every little email, every little thing like that, but things that you're actually going to be using. Yeah. So that particular one, then no, you wouldn't post it. I think it's good practice to have everything go through the CalRecycle staff. So if we do get a public act request, we have one place. We discussed that before, not with the commission, but we discussed how we're going to have that. We need to have everything in one place.
And then subject again to two commissioners can discuss something.
Yes,
between themselves. So, right. Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. I think then we can move on to the next bill, which is SB 54 by Senator Allen about packaging and products. Does anybody have any positions, thoughts that they would like to share on this very high profile bill in relationship to what we are working on? Thoughts? None? Yeah, Commissioner Dunleavy?
Yes, thank you. Just as it applies to beverage containers, I'm not comfortable, and I don't think it's a good idea that beverage containers become part of the AB 54 program in 2025, because that basically puts the bottle bill kind of on a death walk to 2025. So the existing bottle bill that I think can be fixed, and it should be fixed, if it falls under AB 54, everything's going to change in a couple years. So there wouldn't be any major reform, and they would just let it roll into something that we don't know what it's going to look like. So I think AB 54 has a lot of good provisions, but taking beverage containers out of it would be much better for all the existing operators that are out there.
And you mean SB 54?
SB 54, excuse me.
Thank you. And Commissioner Lapis.
I'll just say that the bill does not in any way take beverage containers out of the bottle bill program. They would be subject to SB 54 in addition to the bottle bill program. So, for example, CalRecycle would then have the authority to require recycled content or implement source reduction programs to reduce unnecessary consumption, in addition to reporting and other things. But it's not a replacement for the bottle bill, although I know some folks would want it to be, but it definitely isn't.
Okay, and I don't see any other comments, but I have a question that maybe Commissioner Lapis can help with, because I believe the bill, the way it's written, there isn't a funding source. Is that correct?
Not a direct funding source, no, but you basically, as written, there's a requirement on manufacturers to achieve rates and dates, and it's up to them to figure out how to do that. They can form internal stewardship organizations, or they can do things as individual companies. So the funding comes from the manufacturers one way or another.
Okay. Yeah, because I just, with our commission, I know there was no funding for the commission to CalRecycle to support us, and it's been a real struggle for them even just to support us with their existing staff. And I just hope that there's enough for the work to get done.
And I'm sorry, let me clarify. So the regulatory costs of CalRecycle are funded. CalRecycle under the bill has the authority to pass along the regulatory costs onto the manufacturers. So there's a regulatory fee, but in terms of funding infrastructure and stuff like that, that's what isn't directly funded.
The manufacturers that have to do it. Thank you for clarifying that. I kind of knew that, but I wanted to make sure everybody understood it because it's important. And Commissioner Osugura.
Yeah, more of a statement regarding SB 54. It's just important to highlight that the majority or a lot of the waste and recycling industry has been partners with the state and the many communities that we serve for decades. When no one else would, we have invested billions of dollars in recycling infrastructure to support the state recycling goal. The investments made by the industry have ensured that millions of customers have effective, convenient, and cost-effective recycling services. And my last part of my comment would be, to enhance, to supplement, rather than to replace or duplicate the highly effective infrastructure and franchise system should be important. That would be my comment regarding SB 54.
Okay, thank you. And are there any other comments on this bill? It's a very important bill for California and the nation. Okay, thank you, everybody's comments. And then we'll move on to the last bill. And again, a time check, we've got half an hour left and I think we can do it. On SB 1332 by again, Senator Allen on solid waste recycling and composting infrastructure. Any comments on this bill? Thoughts you want to share? Questions? Doesn't look like it. Okay. Well, then I think we are done with agenda item number 11. So I will move on now to agenda item number 12, which is the discussion of scheduling and process for reporting to the legislature. This was bumped from the last committee meeting because we formed the committees and it took a lot of time. So I will kick this off and look to our vice chair to weigh in and then the rest of you. But generally what I've been thinking about is how do we build this brick by brick? Doing a report at the end of a big process with a lot of moving parts, and it's much more time consuming, quite frankly, difficult. So I like to build reports brick by brick. So I'm thinking, you know, let's say a committee develops a recommendation, they have consensus on that, they advise the commission, we take it up at a commission meeting, and the commission votes 17-0 that we all agree this is really good policy advice we should be giving, and put it in the report. My idea is this, is that we actually develop a Google document, which only I and maybe the vice chair can manipulate. And we would take the final approved commission language and put it right in there. We could start an outline of what this report would look like. And then maybe we put spaceholders for all the things that the law says we have to deliver. And then as committees finish and the commission adopts, we simply put that language right into that slot. And that way the world can see exactly how we're developing this report of recommendations, and all of you can see it. We can all see how it's starting to flow and work together, but it's not a surprise December 15th. Here's what we came up with. I really worried that that would be too late and it wouldn't give us enough time to really digest it. So that was my thinking. And Tamara, my first question is for you. Is that legal? I would think so, because we're not hiding anything. Everything is officially adopted by the commission. And then it's put into a public document that really anybody could see.
That should be fine. That's
Okay.
the way you plan on doing it, so that people can see the stages as
Right.
you're going.
Right.
A lot of
I just think it would stop, a lot of questions that would come to us and actually help us see it because we will know exactly where we stand in our process of finishing this on time as we go live. And everybody would see it as well with us. Commissioner Valle, do you
Heidi,
have
I have a quick question for you about the Google document. Is there a way that we can memorialize it at one point in time and post that to our website? I'm a little bit nervous of posting a link that could change in our public notices.
It's going to change after every commission meeting where we adopt a policy. It would be added to that, and you could take that snapshot in time and make that part of the next agenda or a formal document online, but it would be constantly changing. That's the whole point, is that we're building it brick by brick. So
But
whatever
you-
snapshot in time you want to take and post it, we can do that. But it would be, I was predicting it would be live. So it's there all the time. Does that
So
make
you're
sense?
you want to memorialize minutes, basically, of your discussion about this document. But you're
I
having
want to build a document as we go from the minutes of what we adopt.
at the meeting.
At the public meeting, as we adopt so the committees would be, what we'd ask the committee chairs to do is actually forward final language that committee believes is the right recommendation. And then if, like as we did today, we could put that document up, we could edit it live and then adopt it. Or we could choose to be a final draft like we did today and let everybody in the public have another bite at the apple and the public comment, and then adopted at another meeting. But once it's adopted by this commission, that language as it was written would go straight into the report where we had the placeholder for that item.
So you're adding, okay. I don't really see a problem with that, except I think what Audrey is saying, that if we do it that way, you have to keep posting the same document. Is that your concern, Audrey? Because you can just post the whole document with the change.
Yeah, it's actually Paulina. So I guess it's just how the commission and legal think that we can post it. if
can
it
we
should be a link
discuss
to
that
the
later?
Google Doc.
Yeah, we're getting tight on time, and I'm thinking the process stuff, like.
Okay, we'll discuss it. You talk about in our other meeting that we have. Okay, we can discuss the actual process about the, because I don't see why we have to just go in there and update that same document. Why we just can't send the version out from the meeting. That'll take care of everything. Even if you want to redline it and show what the new stuff was.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure legally it's possible, and then we can discuss the details offline.
Yeah, you're talking about it at the meeting, so it's all public, and it's all been, it's all open.
Excellent. And Vice Chair Valle, do you have any thoughts on this before I turn it over to the comments?
Just quickly, I think it's a great idea. It's in essence a storyboard that continues to change, and it's always available to us. So we can probably process pages as we go along from the minutes, and those things that we want to memorialize and put into that storyboard will continue to update the context as we go forward. Good idea.
Great, thank you. And so the first comment actually I believe was from Karu Cruz, so it's probably a public comment, Karu?
Yes, that's correct. Hold on a second. So it's from Colleen Foster from the City of Oceanside. Given this commission is tasked with providing guiding recommendation to the legislator in achieving the state target goals for diversion, where is the commission's in reviewing the 1383 diversion status report passed due by CalRecycle? Can the commission push CalRecycle to release the report so that the commission and our industry has the fair opportunity to provide direction to the legislature on what can be done to improve or what cannot be done, given the new COVID reality on our ability to comply and achieve target goals? In statute, that report was to be used as an informative tool to engage the legislature on whether more time or support is needed to achieve targets. The end of that comment.
Okay, I think that was actually about a prior agenda item, which we took up earlier. So we can quickly go back, and Mr. Petashner reported back that they've been told that that report is going to be delivered soon. That's very nebulous. And I think it is important that we get that report in order for the Organics Committee to do their work. So I guess I would really ask CalRecycle, is there any update for us to be able to get that report sooner rather than later? What does soon mean? And then we'll get back to the items, because this had been brought up earlier.
At the meeting, I specifically asked if there was a target date that CalRecycle staff had, and there is no date at this time. They were working on it.
Yeah, and I don't think we have an additional update from that since that meeting on Monday. Dan, are you aware of any updates if you're still online?
I do not have any new information. That report is being prepared by a different division in CalRecycle, so I'm not privy to their internal goals and things like that. So unfortunately, I don't have any additional information to provide on the due dates or the deadlines that they're striving for at this time.
Okay, well, I will just suggest that we're getting multiple comments, that this is a very important document to get for the committees and the commission to do our work. And all we can do is encourage CalRecycle to get that done as quickly as possible. So we'd like to be kept updated. And again, I think it's ASAP. And not that you don't have anything else to do, like support the commission or anything, but we appreciate anything you can do to expedite it. So with that, I'll turn it back to our discussion we were just having and get back to some of the chat comments. So I think the next person was Commissioner Schneider. Did you have a comment?
Thank you, Chair Sanborn. I like your format. I like the process. The logistics can get worked out, but I'm wondering if we can also have an addendum that are all of the areas that we identify that really need to be fixed, but we're not allowed to talk about given the charter of this committee.
Okay, thank you. And let's see, Commissioner Ward, I think you're next.
Yes, I really like the structure, and I appreciate the focus and how are we going to get this all done. And as you develop the outline, I just wanted to add the suggestion that chances are you're going to find sections of those outlines will really be targeted to specific committees. And you might just specifically figure out a way to identify and say to the committee, all right, these sections, draft them.
Sounds good. Okay, and Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking from the committee chair standpoint of how we filter things into this document. You know, taking action from the full committee, I understand, but market development specifically, we have a pretty specific outline of language from the PRC. And so we have, you know, I mean, as much as I'd like to not produce a report ourselves, we kind of have to address quite an extensive discussion, not just a recommendation. And so I'm not sure how we're going to do that yet, but I'm trying to see how that filters in. Does that mean the full committee then would take, you know, if we can do it 5 pages, 10 pages, that we might require to meet the statutory requirements, then is this committee going to have to turn pages and agree on language to get it into the report? Or are you talking about just the final recommendations where a committee could do something that's kind of a background document? So I'm just trying to think of how this all fits together so we can be efficient at our end in producing what you're looking for.
Well, and you raise a great point, and that's why I suggest that we actually have the chair and vice chair outline what should be in this report as required by the legislation, and put in all the items, because now we've got all the committees have outlined what they're going to work on, and we put all those things in there. We make sure the outline is accurate. We've got it all right. And everybody knows which committee is delivering what section of this report to meet the mandate. And then you as the committee chair can decide how and how much you want to deliver to the commission. You can decide to have background. You can decide to create a whole lot of work for yourself and do a big long thing if you want. But the main thing is we have to just, in the report, provide what's required, and then we can start hanging more ornaments on the tree, I would say. And again, this would be an evolving document, and as we all look at it, as it's evolving, we may say, hey, we need a little bit more background here, or we need a little bit more context here, and ask a certain committee to develop that.
Yeah, and again, I guess my question really has to do with the quite explicit language around market development. And, you know, Cal Recycle produced a plan to address that back in 1993, and it's 49 pages long. Okay, that's what it took them to do that.
It could be a background.
That's the background. No, we have to update this plan. So we're being asked to address the same statutory language. So, you know, I mean, I can't see us being able to produce anything that extensive in the time frame we have, but we're still being directed to address a lot of issues, and it's going to be hard to do it in, you know, 5 or 10 bullet points. I think I just think the other committees have a different situation. So.
I'm not sure they do. And actually, the clearer the language is in the legislation, it seems the easier it is, because we know exactly what we're shooting for. So
well, we know what we're shooting for. it's an armful.
Right. And that's our job, is to boil it down and get it done. And the one thing I've learned is I've seen a lot of commission reports that are verbose and they sit on a shelf and get dust. What we need is to make sure that we've got a really clear direction and consensus around concepts that the legislature can take and run with on bills, and feel confident that they've got consensus around and then they can write the bills in detail and all that. I guess we got to start where we can and then build on it. And I think we'll all do that together as we see it. Commissioner Ward, did you want to land?
Yeah, just a couple other things. And as we're assembling this, I think reference documents is a really important background bit, and we're going to want to be clear about which reference documents are going to be attached to our report. There's been a lot of great work by Cal Recycle and their contractors, but there's other good work that's out there. And I think we need to be clear about what's included as a reference document and what's not. The other thing is, similarly, for legislators and others, as we're all aware, they have varying depths of understanding of our challenges. And so I really think setting the context and the background can be important in telling the story about what's necessary to happen in future. So I think that there needs to be some awareness of that as we're developing the reports. Also, as we do this, we're going to need to identify, while we're regularly talking about it, I think the final report will absolutely need to focus on both data gaps and policy consistency. I think those are both really important issues, and it's just basic elements of good governance. If you can't monitor what it is you're trying to do and you don't have good data, then you can't achieve your goal. Similarly, if you have policies that are at odds with each other, even if they're completely outside the framework of what we're working on, I believe it is part of our obligation to at least set that context and say, look, part of these policies are working against the goals we're trying to achieve, and we need to call that out.
Excellent suggestions. And I think one of the things we could ask the committee chairs to do is to suggest from the committees which reference documents you think are so very important that they should be attached. And again, we're in 2020. Paper doesn't really matter because we're doing everything electronically. So we'll just, do a reference document with links. And maybe, for things that you think are really fundamental to your advice. Any other thoughts on this? Otherwise, I think if you're okay, then I'll just work with Vice Chair Valle. We will draft an outline of what this report might look like. Try to make sure we've caught everything in the statute we're required to deliver, and then plug in what the committees outlined that they're working on and where, so which committee we believe is developing that response, and make sure we're all on the same page so that everybody knows exactly what track we're on to get a successful report delivered. Does that make sense? Is everybody okay with that? Thumbs up? Awesome. All right, any thumbs down? I don't see any. Okay, so we will start working on that, and thank you very much for that discussion. We're almost back on time. So the last item really is 13, our agenda items for future meetings. Are there any items for the future meetings you want to make sure we have? We can leave the standing items as they have been, and then they give us extra time if we need it. Like the discussion about the charter. And I think the meat of it is really the report outs from the committees and allowing us all to discuss and digest what these committees have discussed and found out and what they're doing with that information. And so we can all process it together. Is that generally where everybody is on the next agenda? Or I do see we have one, two, let me go back. It looks like we got a couple comments here. So I'll turn it over. It looks like Commissioner Ward is first.
These are general concepts that have come up that I'm curious about, and I don't know the right way to go about them. So I'll just throw them out there. Maybe they're future agenda items. I don't know. But one of the letter comments that we did receive was specifically focused on concerns about PFAs in plastics. And it raised the question for me about a lot of green chemistry that we don't know about. And I think that's pretty fundamental. But ultimately, my question is, how, as a committee, are we going to come to a conclusion about whether or not PFAs are a concern and what our levels of comments are going to be about that sort of level of environmental toxicity? How are we going to come about making those decisions and making those recommendations? What framework do we have of assessing environmental toxicity? Why is there not a requirement that if you're a packaging engineer calling out these products, that there isn't a requirement that you go through an environmental toxicity course? All of these questions. I don't know. How do we deal with the green chemistry issues for those of us who are not chemists? That's one issue. The other is the general question about, and this comes into labeling and other things, but how is a product approved for sale in California? Is there a process by which there's a saying something's okay or not okay? Is there appeals process by which they're determined to be not okay? I don't feel like I have a very good understanding of that. And when we're talking about labeling and mislabeling, it immediately raises the question of, okay, so if they're across the line, what happens? At what point did they know that they were going to be across the line? At what point were they able to ask anyone, is this across the line? I don't know the answer to these questions. So, and I feel that they're part of what we do, and I don't know how we're going to address them.
So I guess the question is for the future agenda of the commission, because this could be assigned to a committee to dig into these issues. And it seems to me the recycling committee might really be a good place to bring out this issue of toxicity in packaging and the recyclability of something. Does that sound reasonable? Because I'm not sure I'd want to have that broad discussion at the commission level until it's been maybe vetted a little bit. Does that sound?
For my part, I would like to hear somebody from Cal EPA, whether that's DTSC, Cal Recycle, somebody else. How do they go about assessing the toxicity of a product or a package? How is that even assessed? I'd like to hear an expert on that. I don't know.
Okay, so it's a request not of an agenda item. Well, maybe it is a request for agenda item on the commission agenda that would have Cal Recycle or somebody from Cal EPA present to us about how they determine the labeling and the toxicity of something as to whether it's qualified for being a food package, for example.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly along those lines.
Is that something that Cal Recycle can do by the next meeting? Can I ask Cal Recycle staff? Anyone? Audrey? Paulina? They're probably talking.
Dan might know this a little bit better than I do. I'm not sure that toxicity falls within our authority, or as mentioned, if that's under DTSC.
Well, I think
so
as
something
toxicity,
that we'll have to take back and discuss.
why don't you take back and discuss? But my thinking is that if we're trying to give advice on recyclability, it goes hand in hand. But that's just my thinking on it. But let's, I don't know if we can get on the next agenda, Ted, but let's put it in deferred to Cal Recycle, and it's an excellent point.
I trust the chair and the vice chair to figure out the way to bring these in future agendas and work with Cal Recycle accordingly, but I don't know a better way to sort of throw out these open-ended topics, and I'm sorry for distracting anybody. And by the way, the rest of the commissioners, if any of you feel like I'm totally off topic and we need to focus, that's fine.
I think it's a really good question. I just don't think we can probably answer it this minute. So we'll just defer and we'll get back to you on that. But we will work to get it on a future agenda, whether it's the next one or not, I'm not sure. Okay, excellent. So we'll, Vice Chair Valle, do you have a comment or a question?
No, just since I have the attention of everyone, another really good question. Has anybody heard anything about the new director and when that's going to be done? Is there any update?
I haven't heard anything. Cal Recycle staff probably haven't either.
Hi, Dan Brown again. I do not have any new information on that.
The last I had heard was the decision wasn't going to be made for about 6 months, but you know, it's a big rumor mill. Nobody really knows. There's no direct communication or anything.
Okay.
Okay, and I think the next commenter is Commissioner Medrano.
Yeah, as a future agenda item, I'd like to have Cal Recycle come in and give us the status of that report that we're all hoping it comes in. I'm being optimistic. Maybe by next meeting, we won't need to because the report is out, but just in case it's not.
We'll put it on the agenda and request the Cal Recycle give us a more than soon sort of answer if possible, please.
Yes.
Since we're right in the middle of trying to get all this work done, that'd be great.
And I'd like
Okay.
to also echo Commissioner Ward's concern on how we approve projects or products in California. I've always wondered that for recyclability, obviously, but also for the different technologies that come in, not just conversion technologies, but some of these claims that they will turn plastic into, into some kind of product that we need, and how does that technology get approved? So yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Commissioner Ward.
And that's slightly different. We're focusing on the technology, like who decides that a technology is okay or not okay. So thank you for bringing that up. And if nobody, why? Okay, and Commissioner Schneider?
Also, Commissioner Ward, I thank you for that. On green chemistry, that would also be a labeling issue. It would be similar to the cancer warnings on cigarettes and the labeling that I don't think has happened with Monsanto and Roundup. So that puts us into integrated pest management areas. But I would love to see and learn more about that. We talked a little bit on recycling market development about rubberized asphalt and if that's contributing to rubber particulates into aquatic environments. So in a way, this is somewhat related on that. We have to look bigger than just how we're recycling something. It's a overall impact.
Thank you. And
I'd like to know how microbeads get banned. I mean, to me, having inorganic microbeads is a no-brainer, or banning inorganic microbeads.
I'm sorry, they were banned in certain products. I'm sorry, so what's the question? What would you like on the agenda? I just want to make sure.
That all of this fits under more of a green chemistry environment, which I think is a great point for a future discussion. And if it's lacking in our goals, then we add it to that list. Sorry, phone.
Very good, thank you. Commissioner Lapis?
Yeah, just to Ted's point on toxicity. So again, we're supposed to look at what is recyclable or compostable pursuant to the definition 1335, which does include toxicity, which includes consideration of green chemistry and recommendations from OEHA. So it's definitely within that scope.
So we could ask OEHA, maybe we'll talk to CalRecycle and see if maybe OEHA comes in to present too, because they're the ones that I think do some of this. We'll find out. All right, thank you. And then Commissioner Toyota with 2 minutes to go.
Just very quickly, I just want to be clear that in the meat of the next meeting when we're talking about committee updates, that we can talk about maybe policy at that point, maybe have that discussion, or do we need to have that specifically on the agenda in a different point? Because there may be some things that are easy that we've talked about before that we may be able to move forward. And I just want to make sure that we have that on the agenda and the ability to kind of discuss things as soon as possible.
If there's a
recommendation,
if there's a policy recommendation from the committees, then we should actually, that's an excellent point. We should put on the next agenda a placeholder. Well, actually, it kind of is, it's report outs, but maybe what we do is report outs and consideration of committee policy recommendations. So that would allow us to approve a policy recommendation. Excellent point.
Perfect.
Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, next commenter. I think that was it. Excellent job, commissioners. I'm gonna, I think at this point, wrap it up because we have 1 minute to go. So this is what in meeting summary and closing I have on my list of what we just accomplished. But I'm going to send an email about the Build Infrastructure Now group. I'm going to CC Commissioner Osagura and Davis on that regarding the request to be there for the BIN Summit in the fall. The second thing is that I'm going to work with the Vice Chair about setting reasonable time limits and whether that's limited in characters, etc. And we got guidance on from our legal team. Thank you, Tamar, for being on, about what is allowed, that 2 people in a committee can meet alone and provide feedback to a committee to get the work done. We finalized our introduction language. And thank you again so much to Vice Chair Valle for putting that together. And that will be sent out to CalRecycle listservs, and we should all be sending it out to our listservs as well to make sure everybody can comment on the guidance document and we can approve it, and that will be on the next agenda. We also, let's see, answered our legal questions again on presentations, how the committees are going to communicate with each other. We reported out on all of these committees and what they're doing. And I guess you're going to all start outlining in writing, please, what the committees have agreed your scope is and your priorities. That really would be helpful for the chair and vice chair to have all that in writing so that we can really start plugging it all in. Because one of the last things we have to do is put that outline together for the final draft report for your review at the next commission meeting, and make sure that we're starting to really outline what we've got to shoot for and do. Have I forgotten anything? Okay. Well, outstanding work. Thank you all so much for your great work on this commission. I'm so proud to work with all of you, and we'll keep up all this good work. We're going to work on the agenda, get that posted. If any committee chairs have questions on what should be on the next agenda, I'm happy to talk to you today or whenever you need it. And thank you all for being a great support group for each other as we work through all of this. And I'll look forward to seeing you at our next meeting, which will be August 19th. And in the meantime, enjoy your committee meetings. Thank you very much. See you soon. Well done, everyone.
Good job. Thank you.